to episode 41 of the Retro Movie Love podcast. My name is Michael Ferrari of Cinema de Meep, and welcome to the show. It's been a long time, guys. So sorry that I've completely flaked out on you guys. But I am back, and I have a friend here. He's been on the podcast before, so I just wanted to welcome him as a co-host. So say hello, David.
Hello, everyone. I'm David Nofire. I am from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I was on the last one, I believe. That was the last one that you did, right?
I did. We talked about Dream. Did we talk about Dream? No, we didn't talk about Dream Warriors.
We talked about March 1987.
March, yes. I did. Yeah. I did one after that one, April, by myself.
Oh,
okay,
I think. Okay.
But that was the last podcast. That was April 2017. So here we are. It's January. Was it January 14th, 2017? So many months later, but I'm thankful I could do this again, and I'm thankful that you're joining me today because I had a lot of fun recording with you.
Me too. Thanks for having me back.
So what's been going on? We're going to talk about our usual stuff. Let's talk about we had the holidays. That's what happened recently. Christmas happened. Whatever holidays you guys celebrate. How was it for you? Did you survive the holidays?
I did. I'm glad that they're over. So tomorrow is a holiday as well,
That's right.
Martin Luther King Day, but it'll be more of a laid back one, not one of those ones where you're driving to and fro all day.
Did you get to rest tomorrow?
Yes, I do.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I discovered I'm not sure if I was really naughty or really nice last year because I discovered today in my cabinet where I keep the liquor, I discovered that I have now 4 bottles of Lagavulin, which is insane because I've only ever had like 1 bottle at a time, and now I have 4. 3 different people bought me a bottle for Christmas, and I should feel like the luckiest guy in the world. I just went to look for some Lagavulin because I knew I was going to podcast tonight. Get it ready, and then I saw 4 bottles. I'm like, how did this happen? It's so crazy. I don't know. I feel really extravagant and lucky. And I feel like I should wear a fur coat or something, and walk a big dog and just walk around Manhattan like that. Related note. I moved again. Last time I podcasted from Long Beach, and part of why I haven't been podcasting is we decided to move once again because that's what I've been doing in the past 3 years is moving. I never thought I'd be moving so much, but that's how life is, ups and downs and crazy twists and turns. You never know what is going to happen sometimes, and I ended up, of all places, this is where I am. I'm in the suburbs of New Jersey, guys. I'm living the suburban life in New Jersey. I'm a real housewife of New Jersey, if you will. I think we decided because we had so many bumps in California that we needed some stability, and my wife's jobs were not so stable there. The company she was working for decided it was going to sell off its business. And so she had to scramble to find another job, and then someone called, and it was New York. New York called and said, "Hey, do you want to work here?" And she said, "I don't know. I'll talk to my husband." And then we talked a lot, and had a great heart-to-heart about what we wanted and where we saw ourselves and where we thought we might end up, and so on. And we made a big decision to move out back to the East Coast. And so, yes, I made the trek back to the East Coast, but this time in suburban New Jersey. I'm in North Jersey, so it's not too far from New York City. So just a 30-minute train ride to New York City, so it's not too far from my old stomping grounds. But it is definitely a suburban world, and one that I like and I've adjusted to. since we moved here in the summer, and I'm enjoying it, and hopefully it's somewhere we can lay some roots for a while. And this kind of leads me to talk about our connection with that. So we decided to move out east, back east, and part of the incentive was to take a road trip back east, and that's something we never thought, never done, but always discussed, my wife and I, of driving cross country, and I really like driving. One of those crazy people who actually likes to drive, and so I decided, hey, let's do it, and we drove our car across country. We had our stuff shipped, in a big moving truck. So it was just us, me and my wife, and our kids were back in San Diego with their grandparents. So we didn't have to deal with them for the ride. It was really nice, and we drove straight cross country. And one of the stops we made along the way, because we broke it up and we decided to stay in a few places and stay overnight at a hotel or motel. And one of the places we stopped in was in your stomping grounds in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And we got to meet you, which was awesome, in person.
Yeah, that was great meeting you, and we got to have dinner and stop by the theater that I do the monthly series at. So it was a lot of fun.
And this is one of the biggest surprises of my wife and I's life. When we got to that theater, lo and behold, we saw our names on the marquee. It said, "Welcome, welcome, Michael and Joyce to Tulsa," and it was we were shocked to see that on this on this marquee, our names on our marquee in Tulsa at I would say at a historic theater in Tulsa. This is a theater that has a long history, and like the theater to go to in Tulsa. And we were just so surprised, and we were so shocked and so thankful that you were so thoughtful to do that for us. We still talk about it all, like once in a while. Like, I can't believe that was like the highlight of our road trip, for sure, and highlight of last year was that beautiful welcome to Tulsa. I don't think that could be topped by anyone. Well, thank you so much, David.
Well, you're welcome, but I'm just glad that you were able to stop by on your trip. So it was great meeting you.
Guys, when in Tulsa, go meet David. Go meet David and stop by the Circle Cinema, because good people. I mean, this is good people, and he's truly a great guy. Thank you, David. Really great to drive cross country, and definitely one of our highlights. It was Tulsa, and to seeing the country was pretty amazing. Such so beautiful. All the beautiful spots, and maybe some not so beautiful spots, but we stayed in some definitely not anywhere fancy. I think in Tulsa we stayed in one of the nicer places. It was with nicer hotels, and I think Tulsa and Pittsburgh were two of the nicest places we stayed in, and it was a fun trip, and we're thankful to have lived in LA County. And I was thankful for all the screenings I went to there. I wish I could have attended more, but life gets in the way, of course. But you get to go to a lot of screenings, which is awesome. We should actually talk about what we've been watching recently. So let's get right into that. What have you been watching?
Well, here lately, I've been catching up on the year-end films. Some of them have been coming in, and some are yet to come. Like Call Me by Your Name has not opened yet, and it opens on Friday, I believe, here. And there are a couple other films that I haven't seen yet, like I, Tonya, and I'm actually watching Good Time right now. Have you seen that movie?
I did see Good Time. That was on my list of recently seen.
Yeah, I'm about halfway through it, and I'm enjoying it quite a bit. So it might end up on my top 10 list.
Yeah, I'm kind of so on that movie. I want to like it more than I should, but I know for me there's some questionable choices that the filmmakers made that kind of took me out of it. And when you see the film, you'll probably, if you see the whole film, you probably will know what those choices are. I just felt a little bit too um, mean spirited, and I don't mind some of that in films, but it just kind of took me out of it, and I got kind of upset.
Mm.
And the plot kind of mirrors like plots that I like. It kind of to me that movie mirrors Night of the Juggler, when it's about kind of tearing through a city to like rescue someone who part of your family, and that's kind of what his journey is in the movie. And he meets a lot of characters along the way, and he's just trying to will stop at nothing to help his brother in that case, and Night of the Juggler was his daughter. They kind of have very similar vibes, and they're both like gritty New York movies. So I thought there was a striking similarity between the plots of those two movies. It wasn't like a kidnapping, of course. Well, there's actually a kidnapping in Good Time. But it's yeah. I thought it was interesting. I just kind of wanted to. I guess I wanted to like it a little bit more. But what else have you been watching?
Well, I've been catching a lot of these films at the theater, so I sort of compiled a top 10 list for you for 2017, and these kind of may change, but right now I'm thinking that this is kind of a sort of a framework for how I feel about the movies
Sure.
of the last year. And in number 10, I've got Blade Runner 2049.
Mm-hmm.
I've got Lady Bird in number 9.
Yep.
And this is a list of favorite movies rather than my top best movies.
Right.
And then I've got It at number 7.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we disagree on this one probably. Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
Mm-hmm. We do disagree.
And I've got The Florida Project, The Killing of a Sacred Deer, John Wick Chapter 2, Brawl in Cell Block 99, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and right now my top film is probably The Shape of Water.
Okay. Well, you might have we have a similarity there.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go through my top 10.
Okay.
Number 10, Call Me by Your Name, and these are like when you do top 10s, like especially when movies are so fresh, you just watch them once most of the time, like that they will change top 10. So these are not like permanent, but this is what kind of stuck out to me, and then of course the order will always change. 10 is Call Me by Your Name. 9, I would put Brigsby Bear.
Okay.
Number 8, I would do Logan Lucky, which I was really surprised by. Number 7, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Number 6, John Wick Chapter 2. Number 5, The Disaster Artist. Number 4, Lady Bird. Number 3, Get Out. Number 2, Baby Driver. And number 1, The Shape of Water. So I think we have a similar top 10 there. That one just, I seen all of these movies before The Shape of Water. Looking at the list now. Yes. And I saw that one last, and I don't know, it just really blew me away. I mean, what Guillermo del Toro did on a small budget. Now, it's hard to believe that it's a small budget. Like, everyone assumes it's like, okay, there's effects in it, there's a creature, there's water, and those kinds of things usually cost a lot of money to make in movies. It's so well produced and shot and everything, and you assume it's made on a big budget, like a typical Hollywood big budget, but it was made for like under $20 million. It was made for $19 million. And and he worked with a studio. Just amazing that he could do all that with relatively little. And now filmmakers of his caliber usually are used to making movies with a much bigger budget and much bigger production. But he decided he wanted to make it more intimate. He wanted to just put his heart and soul into it, and it really shows to me. And that's why I think, for me, it's the best directed movie of 2017, and just the overall the best story that I took away from, and I just really stayed with me. Both my wife and I watched it, and we both fell in love with it immediately. And it is a love story, but it's a very interesting one. It's not just one that's just one thing. It's a few things. You know, he has a lot on his mind. There's definitely some political undercurrents to it, and that draw parallels to our world today. It's a period piece as well, and I just was just really surprised by what he could pull off in a movie like that and with that story. And you know, he also has affinity for monster movies, and while I wasn't a monster movie kid growing up, I definitely related to that greatly. I did love horror movies of all kinds, and so he's kind of a hero. You know, he cares about these things deeply, and it's always great to have a filmmaker like that who cares so much and just puts his heart up there on the screen. And that's why I just really fell in love with it. So it was a pretty, you know, I gotta say, 2017, pretty amazing year for movies. I've heard some people complain about it, but I don't know. I can't remember the last year, especially in this decade, the tens, where there were so many movies that I loved. Like all these movies, this whole top 10 list, I would probably give like an A to, like an A score. I never do that. I would maybe at most give like two films like that, because I feel like a lot of years movies are just kind of good but not great. But I felt like there were a lot of great movies this year, or 2017 we're talking about, and just I don't know, I'm just really surprised by that. So you know, the world may be falling falling down around us, but at least film was pretty good.
Yeah, I have to agree. A lot of solid films, particularly in the fall this year. But there were some movies that didn't quite hit my top 10, but you mentioned as well, like
Mm-hmm.
Get Out, for example. I did enjoy Get Out quite a bit, so
Mm-hmm.
that's one that's just kind of hovering near the top 10 for me.
Yeah, there are definitely movies like that too. Like a movie that surprised me that I should have in my top 10 list, but I don't. Girls Trip
Hmm.
was hilarious. Probably the funniest movie of 2017. I just laughed really hard in that movie. I've watched it three or four times now. I just love it. I went on a Blu-ray. Watch Girls Trip. And Columbus was one of those movies that was sort of on the bubble. I just love that. Yeah, not on the bubble. Star Wars: The Last Jedi, which I was okay with when it ended, but the more I thought about it, the less I liked it. It's that kind of movie for me.
Hmm.
I'm just not generally a big fan of movies that are very busy, and it's very busy. It's a very busy. There's a lot going on in it, and I don't know. I guess maybe that's why I like The Force Awakens, because it's a bit more stripped down. Maybe it's just how I am. I'm not a big, you know, I'm not like super big into sci-fi. So when it's really busy and it's sci-fi, I kind of get a little bit, I kind of glaze over, or even with action movies in general, I can kind of glaze over if there's too much going on. I felt a little bit like that in that movie. So I'll be interested to see where it goes with the next installment with J.J. Abrams, since I liked his installment so much. But I understand. I'm not a diehard Star Wars fan, so I don't, I understand. And there are people who are really into it, people who really hate it, but I'm sort of in the middle, honestly, about it. I watched a bunch of things recently. Besides a lot of those Oscar movies, I watched MFA, which was a revenge movie with Clint Eastwood's daughter, Francesca Eastwood. I thought that was pretty interesting. Another indie thriller. Well, it's more of a drama called Blame, which I guess is technically a 2018 movie. I haven't watched many 2018 movies, so I think this is one of the best 2018 movies so far. A teen movie. It's like a teen reworking of The Crucible, which I thought was really interesting because it was written and directed and starring a woman who was 19, I believe, at the time. 1920 at the time, and she's really good. And I thought the movie really just kind of clicked with me, and it has some twists that I really liked. So, Blame, definitely worth checking out. I watched that Flatliners remake.
Mm.
Good title for it, Flatliners. Really flat. It just doesn't not worth checking out. It's just kind of whatever. I watched part of Wonder Wheel, the Woody Allen movie.
Hmm.
Now, this is a big deal for me saying that I just watched part of it, because generally I I have seen every Woody Allen movie in theaters since 1989. Um, but because this has been a crazy year for a lot of reasons, and one of those reasons is what's going on in Hollywood, I just really could not bring myself to support Woody Allen, go see his movie in the theater. And I'm glad I didn't because it's a lot like his last three movies, really boring. It's like one of the most beautifully made boring movies. It's like really beautifully shot by Vittorio Storaro, and who's like the master cinematographer, arguably the greatest cinematographer ever. And so it's like beautifully shot, but it's just like no, I just did not get gel. The story was not gelling with me. I found myself bored and not into the characters at all. And that was the case for his last three movies, all beautifully shot and just boring, not good. I think he needs to hang up his hat. Controversial, yes. Brad's Status was another movie that I thought was also kind of boring and not interesting, and I just kind of didn't really click with me at all. I just felt like the story was a little too. I don't know. I just felt a little too. It's head of its own ass. I generally like Mike White, and I think his screenplays are often pretty biting and interesting. But I thought this was a miss for him for sure. And God, what did I watch? I watched Baby Driver a couple of times. I got the Blu-ray. I rewatched Landline, which I didn't like that much when it came out, but I really enjoyed it the second time. It's on Amazon Prime. Creep 2.
Ooh, I want to see that.
Which I was disappointed in. I just wanted to like it more. There were some things I liked about it, but I felt like Creep 1 was enough. I think he's planning on doing another one, so. And then going back a little bit, since it's been so long since I've talked to you guys, I watched Stranger Things season 2, like everybody else did when that came out in the fall. What do you think about that one?
Oh, that's on my list. I watched the first episode. I enjoy Stranger Things.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely on my list. I've just been watching other shows instead. Like I started watching *Halt and Catch Fire*, and so Stranger Things went on the back burner. And I watched a few other things this summer.
Right.
I really liked *Mindhunter*. So I started both of those shows kind of at the same time, and *Mindhunter* sort of took over.
Right.
And I just haven't gotten back to *Stranger Things* yet.
Gotcha. My wife watched *Mindhunter*. I don't know what she thought of it. I think she seemed to like it though. I watched Stranger Things season 2. I went back and watched Stranger Things season 1 because I was like not as crazy about it as everyone else was. I bought the Blu-ray box set, that really cool set that came out from Target, and I don't know. I really liked season 1 when I rewatched it, so I was kind of crazy the first time. Now watching season 2, I'm like, oh no, this is a step down. So I wonder if I'm gonna like it a few months from now. If, like history's gonna repeat itself. I'm like, oh, maybe I just need to watch season 2 again, and then I'll like it. But I don't know. I just felt like the characters were a bit all over the place, and I felt like they were all like kind of sectioned off doing different things to give them things to do instead of it being kind of a cohesive story. So I was a little disappointed. But it's still like as a show about kids, it's still fun. I'm just not so sure that I'm crazy about the overall story about the Upside Down and stuff. But season 1 definitely thumbs up. Gerald's Game, which is on Netflix, I really liked that. I thought that was pretty tense and well acted by Carla Gugino. And another Netflix movie, which also made my top 10 list, I Don't Feel at Home in This World Anymore, with Melanie Linsky and oh my god, what's his name from Lord of the Rings?
Elijah Wood.
Elijah Wood. Thank you so much. That was a surprising movie. That honestly almost made my top 10 list because it was very surprising, and I really liked it. I also love Melanie Linsky, so anything she's in, I'll watch it. Sign me up. And literally anything she's in, I will watch it. And she's great in the movie too. I just need to watch that one again. I was really surprised by it. Like everyone else, I went to see It. And I don't know, I was kind of, again, I was like a little bit so on it. I really like the kids in the movie. I really
Hmm.
like. I think they're all good actors. I think some of the changes kind of shortchanged some of the characters, which I thought was a little off-putting to me, since I knew the story so well, and I really like the miniseries. And I know the miniseries is, like kind of a bit of a watered-down version of the book, but I felt like the miniseries kind of hit more of the right notes that I liked about the book, whereas the movie amped up the horror, and I didn't really like the horror stuff of this new It, which I think is a problem when it's a horror movie if you don't like the horror. But I like the kids in the movie, and I like what they I like some of the characterizations and some of the fun stuff they have to do. But I don't know. I want to like it more. Maybe I'll like it more when It Part Two comes out. When Volume Two comes out, and it's kind of a whole. It becomes more of a whole, right? Amityville. That there was another Amityville movie. There's many Amityville movies now. Amityville Awakening is the one I watched, and I thought that was not good. I thought it was kind of boring.
Is Diane Franklin in that one?
No, there's one being filmed right now with Diane, or just wrapped already, with Diane Franklin playing her mom's character in the part two that she was in. She's like the mom now instead of the daughter. But this was the one with Jennifer Jason Leigh is the mom in this one, and
Wow.
Bella Thorne is the daughter, and daughter has a lot of scenes, and I thought she was kind of whatever. And the movie was just a little too somber and not scary or that interesting. Just for a movie set in the Amityville house to be kind of dull is a bit of a waste, don't you think? Um, and highlight of my fall, I would say, is going to see Halloween 4 and 5 in the theater, which I loved seeing on the big screen. I'm a bigger fan of Part 5, of course, if you listen to this podcast, but I enjoyed both 4 and 5 in theaters immensely. So anytime those play in the theater, I was like, it was me and two other people for both screenings, and the same two other people.
Wow.
And those screenings were both a week apart from each other. So, but it was $5 screenings, $5 Tuesdays, whatever it was. I think Halloween fell on a Tuesday, so I went to see, or I think it was Halloween. It was Halloween or Halloween Eve, one of those two. I went to see Halloween 4 and 5, and definitely a highlight. And that's it. That's a lot of stuff. I'm sorry, guys.
Well, I'd have to say that based off of what you just said, I completely forgot about Gerald's Game, and I think that would make my top 10. And I would also say that my highlight of the fall for going to the movies was seeing the 4K restoration of Suspiria.
Oh wow!
I actually saw it 3 times. So
Three
that
times.
was
Wow.
within a few days. So
That's
that
amazing.
was quite something.
I got the Blu-ray in from Synapse. I know it's not a 4K Blu-ray, but it's remastered, right? I think it's 4K remaster, right?
Yeah, that is the same master, but it's going to be in 1080p
Right.
on your display.
I'm waiting for 2172. Whatever. DP. Is it DP?
I don't know. I can't keep up.
Double penetration. What? Yeah. So yeah, I like Suspiria. That's definitely my favorite. I would say my favorite Argento movie, and I can't wait to watch. I don't know why I put off watching the Blu-ray. I think maybe part of me wants to see it in the theater. There haven't been any screenings locally, so if one does come, I will go see it in the theater. But 3 times, I'm very impressed. Any other cool screenings? Because you go to screenings much more often than I'd ever do.
Well, I've got one coming up in a couple of weeks. Going to Austin it's called the Reevesolution. Mm-hmm. It's 5 mystery films in 35 millimeter at the Alamo Draft House.
Whoa.
And they're all Keanu Reeves films.
Oh, that's awesome. My wife and I are very big Keanu Reeves fans. We're very pro Keanu in this house. He is he is a celebrity that we can look up to, I would say, especially in a time when celebrity is at its lowest. I think you could trust Keanu to raise the bar and to be, a genuine good person. And I like his, he's not known for like having great acting chops, but though I appreciate his acting style, I think I like Keanu's presence as a film star. So that's part of, and I also think the John Wick movies are really amazing. So
Yeah, he's wonderful when he's cast well. When he's not, he sort of sticks out in not a great way. But
right.
when he's well cast, he's terrific.
Right, and I hope he and Alex Winter can get that Bill and Ted movie going, because I know they both are into doing it. Really excited at the idea of seeing them as older Bill and Ted. That could be pretty amazing. So let's all put that out there in the universe. Let's all put positive vibes that Bill and Ted 3 is going to happen. Let's make it happen. Everyone right now. Bill and Ted 3. Let's make it happen in our minds. It'll happen. All right, so moving from Bill and Ted to the 80s, because that's where Bill and Ted was born. We're going to do our 1987, summer 87 films. Now, I was doing my series of 87. I stopped in April. I wanted to do the rest. I really did want to go through each month, but then, damn, life got in the way and stuff. So I skipped over May. May, there were a lot of fun things in May. A Keanu Reeves movie, coincidentally, River's Edge, came out in May. I revisited that when I was meaning to actually do the podcast on that one, and I really, really love River's Edge. I think it's a great film. What else came in May? Hot Pursuit. Do you remember that one with
John Cusack?
John Cusack, one of the lesser John Cusack 80s teen comedies, but okay for what it is.
Yeah, fun, kind of forgettable.
Fun, forgettable, yeah, exactly. The All Nighter was also in May. Susanna Hoffs teen comedy. Susanna Hoffs from the Bengals. Also, maybe not a great example of the teen film, but I think I liked it. I liked her in it too. I thought she should have been in more movies. She definitely has a presence, of course, and quite beautiful. In May, there was a big movie that I'm sad that I didn't cover, but I will cover. I'm sure at some point in the podcast. The Gate came out in May. I think we both share a love for The Gate. That movie, that creature feature.
Yes, that's a lot of fun. That's one that I didn't see when I was a kid and have only kind of come around to in recent years, but I've seen it a few times in the last few years. It's a lot of fun.
I saw it. Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say I love the Sacrifice, the rock metal band that died in the plane crash. That's a big part of the film. But I want to hear about you seeing it in the theater.
No, I did see it at the theater, and my sister and I think I took my sister, and it was playing at the Walker Theater, and I'm sure I'm going to mention the Walker a lot in this podcast, because that's what in 1987 I saw so many movies at the Walker. And I don't know, we just had a blast watching it, because it was kind of a surprise. Like, what is this movie? Knew nothing about it. And the poster doesn't really give away a lot about what it's going to be about, other than that's something in a hole, right? And I just was really entertained by it. And, of course, the movie, kids horror movie, that's really what you can call it. Like the Monster Squad, which we may be talking about today. I don't know, just kids horror movies in general. I don't know, there's something about them. And 87 had a lot of them that kind of really just fun. And, especially when you're that age going to see it, it's like perfect. And I just really stuck with me. I remember going to the video store when it first came out on VHS. I was there the day, like that Tuesday it came out, and just waiting for the guy to put out the VHS. And it was at a video store that had, those tags that you put on those little tags that you put under the box instead of taking the box up. Just waiting for those tags to go on there. I just think I waited at the store for like a few hours. I wish I used to do a lot back then. That's how much time I had in my hands. Back in 87 when I was 12. Just a lot of fond memories. of watching The Gate for sure. Another, I guess, for a lot of years, I guess the summer movie always began in late May. I guess in '87 that's sort of true. With in May 20th, Beverly Hills Cop 2 came out. How do you feel about Beverly Hills Cop 2? Are you okay with it, or do you like it, or
I like Beverly Hills Cop 2. I agree with you about the summer of '87 starting here at this point. Nowadays in 2017, 2018, you've got basically May, the beginning of May is probably technically like how they kind of push out the summer movies.
yeah,
But back then it was like right before Memorial Day. And so this
right?
was the first big one. And when you look at this movie, and it's been a while since I've seen it, but it's very immediate from the get go that this is a movie that's directed by a different hand
Hmm.
than was the first film. You know how the first film opens up with this kind of montage set to I think it was Patti LaBelle. I can't remember, but of street life on in Detroit, and this has this kind of like high. This very careful cinematography of LA, and it's in widescreen. It's in scope. It's definitely a different look for the film,
Hmm.
and it's not as funny a film, of course. It's
Right.
more of an action film, but I did enjoy it, but nowhere near on the level of the first one.
Yeah, that's exactly how I do enjoy it. And at some point, I was kind of like down on it because it was definitely more like, oh, this is just just an action movie where the first one had a lot of heart, and you really love the characters and the relationships between the characters. And this one doesn't really have that as much. It has relations, but the movie's screenplay kind of lets it down a bit because it does focus more on like the visceral instead of those other things that would make movies work. But it is what it is, and it's a sequel, and it's meant to have a little bit of a broader stroke, and it's fun. It's Tony Scott. Tony Scott films were a lot of fun and slick and just well made and produced, and I enjoyed it for what I do. Definitely enjoy it for what it is. I just do wish it was funnier. Yeah, that's the one thing I would crank up in the movie if I could just turn it up a bit. Like I don't need like a story about friendship as much as I do like maybe slightly Eddie Murphy just at his because he was sort of at his prime. And he could have been a little bit funnier, but it's definitely enjoyable for sure. Other highlights from May. Let's see, Enemy Territory, which I saw in a theater, which was a lot of fun. Gang members, a gang movie. I thought it was pretty tense movie actually, and well made on a low budget. Hunter's Blood came out. Why Hunter's Blood never got a release on DVD? I don't know, but Hunter's Blood is a pretty scary movie. It's like a thriller, like a Deliverance type of movie, but very well. I think very well done. So whoever can dig up the rights for Hunter's Blood, I think there are a lot of fans out there waiting for that one. It had a theatrical too. It played at the Walker, so that's where I saw it. So I'm just surprised it was kind of forgotten by time. A movie that I've talked about this movie on the podcast before. Horror fans might know it. Teen fans might know it. Morgan Stewart's Coming Home.
Yes, I've seen that in the last year or so.
Yeah, that opened wide in May. It had like an initial release earlier in the year, like a tester release, where it didn't do much, and then they kind of amped up the publicity with this, and that John Cryer was in Pretty in Pink. That's how they sold it, and it did slightly more business, but I don't think it did very well generally with critics or the audience. I saw it. It played the theater up the block from me, so that's where I saw it. And there were like other things that came out in May. There were a lot of movies that premiered on video in May, like It's Alive 3, Island of the Alive, and Return to Salem's Lot, the two Larry Cohen movies. Both came out on video in May, and I enjoyed both of those a lot. a lot of other random things like Night Force and They Still Call Me Bruce and Cyclone and a couple other things. But yeah, May was an interesting month. I wish I could have covered it more. But let's get into June. We do have quite a bit of movies that came out in the summer. The first big, arguably big, after Beverly Hills Cop, big summer movie is this one. Here's the TV spot.
Al Capone, the king of the underworld.
Somebody messes with me, I'm gonna mess with him.
Elliot Ness, the leader of the Untouchables.
I have sworn to put this man away.
4 honest men took on an army of crime and swore to bring Capone to his knees.
You wait till the fight's over, one guy's left standing, and that's how you know who won.
The Untouchables, rated R.
Starts Wednesday, June 3rd at a theater near you.
Yes, The Untouchables. That was Brian De Palma's big budget film from Paramount, and this movie had a terrific pedigree. It was a great bunch of stars. You had Sean Connery, you had Robert De Niro, and the costumes were by Giorgio Armani. Fantastic score by Ennio Morricone. It's a very solid film, and De Palma's definitely doing a big studio film here, but he does you do see his particular touches. You know, he likes to do those split diopter shots. You see that a lot. And you also see in the scene when they're at the train station, you see the baby carriage coming down the steps. That's very reminiscent of Battleship Potemkin, but it's just that kind of thing that he loves to stage. So you know that he's kind of breaking out of that kind of just big film mold to kind of do the sort of thing that he likes to do with thrillers. So all in all, it was a very, very good film. Kevin Costner became big after this, and Andy Garcia, Charles Martin Smith, pretty good cast. All in all, I enjoyed this movie a lot. What about you?
What do you think? Do you think I like this movie, or do you think I'm not a fan?
I think you're not a fan of this movie.
I love this movie.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I know. I for some reason I'm not a big fan of certain genres like war movies or westerns or like gangster movies generally. I'm not that I'm not a fan, because I'm not super big on them, but I just love The Untouchables. Something about it, the way it's so well made, and the way that it's really De Palma with all his tools and his big toolbox, because he has a big toolbox. Because he's doing a big studio movie, and he has all access to everything that he wants, and like you mentioned, you listed off a bunch of things that he has. He has these great actors, he has a great cinematographer, he has a great composer. Can't get any better than these people, and costumes, and he just uses it to its fullest advantage. He makes such a beautifully made movie, and it's such a big, beautifully made movie that's based on a TV show. Who would have thought, right? This didn't really happen as much back then. They weren't making as many it seemed to happen a few times in 1987, but it wasn't really a thing that was in the zeitgeist, let's make a movie based on this show. And Untouchables wasn't a show that I watched growing up, but to me, it's one of the best versions of a TV show that you can get. You can't have, you don't get a pedigree like this. You don't get Sean Connery in an Oscar-winning performance in a show based on a movie based on a show. It didn't happen very often. It did happen a few times since The Untouchables. I would say The Fugitive is another one that really broke out of its mold from a TV show. But I just really dug it. I saw it a couple times that summer. I watched it with Adventures in Babysitting, a movie we'll be talking about today. When it came out, that was the second time I watched it, when Adventures in Babysitting came out. The first time was when it came out on June 3rd. And it played at the RKO Kingsway. I have a very distinct memory of going to see it there. And I just really loved it. I just what am I watching? Well, this is awesome. And of course, all its set pieces that really you just on the edge of your seat. It's a kind of a cliche to even say that, but I just didn't know what was going to happen. I had reference points back then to movies like Battleship Potemkin and that big set piece, so I wasn't sure what was going to happen, and just really, really dug what he did with that one. And for me, it's one of the best movies of the summer because it was so entertaining, so gosh darn entertaining. So I'm glad you mentioned it as one of the title you wanted to talk about because I do love it so much.
Yes, and one person we forgot to mention was David Mamet. He had a fantastic screenwriter as well, so he really had access to the top talent in each department.
He really does. I mean, just I like Andy Garcia. Like some things about Andy Garcia I don't like in movies, but I thought he was well cast here. Kevin Costner, definitely, I would say this is like the birth of Kevin Costner. He had, of course, been in movies before this, but he really had a summer of 1987 because he was in two big summer movies that I love too. So I'm just it's really, that's when his star really shined in the summer. That's when he really came into his own, I would say. And then, of course, later in '88 with Bull Durham and other performances. But definitely an actor I liked, and he's a very likable guy in movies. So he was well cast. Robert De Niro as Al Capone is definitely very memorable. I wouldn't say he's the best interpretation of Al Capone. I feel like some other actors I've seen have really nailed Al Capone. It's definitely a big performance, and he's not given as much to do as, say, like Sean Connery or a few of the other actors in the movie, but he's definitely memorable, I would say, for sure. And of course, it's De Palma working with De Niro because they worked a lot in their early careers together. So it's good to see them working together again.
Yes, I believe De Niro was kind of a last-minute casting decision on this one. I think there was another actor that was cast, and De Niro came in kind of at the last minute. I don't know why, but they certainly got a big guy to fill those shoes for Al Capone in this one.
Definitely. All right, that was The Untouchables. That was June 3rd. June 5th. There were like a bunch of little movies. Well, there was some little and one big movie that came out. Captive Hearts came out. The Munchies. Do you guys remember The Munchies? So that came out. There were a lot of movies in the 80s that were clones of Gremlins, and that was one of the ones that came out. It came and went in theaters pretty quickly. Shady, Wind Rider, and Harry and the Hendersons came out on June 5th, which I remember liking, but not really loving. I liked it, but I thought it was a little bit sappy when I was a kid. Like, it wasn't like my thing. Later in life, I grew to like that movie a lot more. I think it kind of choked me up a bit. I remember a few years back when I watched it on Blu-ray. But back then I was 12 and like I kind of wanted to watch, Robert De Niro smash people in the head with the bat. But Harry and the Hendersons definitely a fan of it now. And then June 10th, a movie came out. It was a Wednesday that I saw, but I believe you wanted to talk about too. So let's get into that one. And here's a TV spot for that.
Don't you come any closer!
It begins on the job with a cop in a truck.
The eyes, I saw his eyes.
Now the evil
Jessica!
is coming home. Nothing can stop them.
Chris!
No one can help you.
Chris!
Dad!
The Believers. They know who you are. Rated R.
Now playing in theaters everywhere. Check your local paper for a theater near you.
The Believers. It's a solid horror movie directed by John Schlesinger, who directed Midnight Cowboy. Stars Martin Sheen as a police psychologist. It starts off with a bang. Very intense opening with his wife getting electrocuted in front his son's eyes. Very traumatic scene, and then we kind of develop into a story that involves a cult and child sacrifice. And the movie is written by or screenplay by Mark Frost, who co-wrote the TV series Twin Peaks with David Lynch. I think that the movie has a lot of disturbing and effective imagery. I do like the cast. It's got Harris Yulin, it's got Robert Loggia, Richard Mazer, Helen Shaver. I think it's a pretty solid film. What do you think?
I thought this was one of the scariest movies that I ever seen when I was a kid. Something that, like, I think I've always mentioned this in the podcast, but like voodoo kind of movies really scare me because that was something that very much was a thing in cultures in New York City. And so I knew it was out there, and I just didn't know what to expect. And of course, this is a movie set in New York City and about voodoo, so that freaked me out. And I just remember just seeing it and just being kind of like frozen in fear and just especially also there's a kid character, just like, oh my god, what is this poor kid, and seeing like his mom die, and then starting with that way, and just like, where do you go from there? And I don't know, I just found it really well made, a John Schlesinger movie. Now, I would call this a horror movie. I know some people might say it's a thriller or a procedural, but it is that. But it's also a horror movie because it is kind of scary, and you do kind of follow Martin Sheen's character in this journey, and it goes to some pretty scary, dark places, and there's a lot of images in the movie that kind of stick with me, and I just really, really think it's well made. And Schlesinger is definitely not a director known for his horror films. He was to me, he was a great filmmaker and made some really good films. Maybe not as much in his later career, known for making a lot of good films. I think the last movie he made was The Next Best Thing with Madonna and Rupert Everett. But before that, he'd made some great films, and Marathon Man, which is another scary movie, but a thriller. Day of the Locust, which is not a scary movie, but also has a really scary scene in it. So he was a director who had that in him, and he just didn't express it always in film. So it's interesting to have that in a lot of his earlier British stuff. I don't know, well made film. So I'm glad, and I also have it on Blu-ray. Twilight Time put it out on Blu-ray.
That's right.
It's worth picking up the Blu-ray because it's really well presented as a good transfer, and just a good, solid movie.
It also has a very good early performance by Jimmy Smits.
That's right. He's kind of very intense in it too. I remember.
Mm-hmm.
Very intense performance, and having Robert Loggia in your movie is always a good thing, I would say. Mm-hmm. And I'm not usually big on movies with cop characters, and that sometimes gets boring. But having like Robert Loggia as a cop, I'm all for it because he's awesome. We love you, Robert, wherever you are. All right, let's get into June 12th. $1 Million Mystery came out. It was one of those movies that was kind of basically, I think it was basically a product placement movie where you kind of had to find. Characters were all looking for money, and I think they tied it in with like a real life mystery that you had to solve to find, and the winner would win $1 million or something. I don't think anyone ever actually won it, but I think it was a big product placement for Glad trash bags, if I remember correctly.
Yes, Glad bags. Tom Bosley. I think Tom Bosley was a spokesman for the commercials as well, and he appears in the movie too.
Wow. Imagine a whole movie based on trash bags. The Puppetoon movie came out on June 12th. And then two other movies. Here is the first one. These are some big movies that came out June 12th. Here's the first one. Here's a TV spot.
Arnold Schwarzenegger. Knock, knock. Versus The Predator. Predator, rated R. The Battle of the Century starts Friday, June 12th.
So Predator, John McTiernan's movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger and the Alien, which we've never really seen this kind of hybrid before that I can think of anyway, of an alien who is the hunter who comes down to Earth and basically interrupts an action movie and infuses it with some horror. It's a solidly directed film. I think that it's definitely something that we hadn't seen before. We hadn't seen this kind of mixture before, and it was a good change up for Arnold. He kind of solidified his control of the action movies in this film, and this is where you kind of sort of see Arnold sort of takes over where Stallone had been flourishing before. And in general, yeah, I'm a fan of this movie. I just rewatched it. The effects still hold up. In the last half hour or so, it's called Predator, but it's mostly about the guys on the mission, and then kind of the mystery of what's happening. And then the last half hour is sort of a cat and mouse game between Arnold and the Predator. And I really love how the movie has this. It's got all this. It's hinting at things with the Predator, but it doesn't explain them. And I like that. And I just think that with all these sequels and all these prequels and everything and reboots, that there's this temptation to over-explain. Like with the Alien series, I don't really need to know all this stuff about it. I got it from the first movie, and the second movie was wonderful. I don't need to know everything about the aliens. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of how I feel about the Predator movies. But I do have high hopes with the new film, The Predator, which is coming out later this year, which is directed by Shane Black, who played Hawkins, the wisecracking, bespectacled member of the team in the original Predator. Hopefully, he'll get his revenge against his early death in the film. And we'll be talking about Shane Black a little more, I'm sure. He had quite a year in 1987. Starting off with Lethal Weapon, which came out in March, which he wrote.
We talked about that one.
Talked about that one, yeah. And so, what are your thoughts?
Of course, I'm a big fan of the Predator. I think, or Predator. Sorry, I'm gonna make a mistake there. Predator is at the time was like the perfect blend of like action and sci-fi and even horror, and it just really. And yeah, I was gonna say Stallone fan. I was a Schwarzenegger fan. Kind of getting myself into trouble. Maybe it's the Scotch talking, and I have a little bit more actually. Excuse me. It just really kicks ass. It delivers all the goods you want from a Schwarzenegger film, but it gives you a lot of thrills and fun. I mean, these guys are really. Having this team in the jungle fighting an unknown force is really, really cool. And it gets pretty grisly. I like that about it. It's not a PG movie, in no way. It pretty amps up the R-rated action, and you still got a lot of that in 1987. We're gonna be talking about it. Definitely another hard R movie. Soon later, that I love. That's also action and sci-fi. So I do like sci-fi. There was some good ones in '87, and it just really had a lot of fun. And I think I'm sure I mentioned this in the podcast where me and a few of my friends were dying to go see this movie, and because I lived at the theater up the block from where I lived. Pretty much, they knew me. I got all my friends me and 4 other kids, to go see Predator on opening day at a packed theater. And it just was a total. It was a total blast for all of us. Of course, you're 12 years old. You're seeing Predator in the theater on opening day. Like, it doesn't get any more perfect than that. Like, past the popcorn, past the Whoppers, I was having a total blast. And I feel like I'm spending my life trying to recreate that kind of perfect experience in a movie theater, just having that much joy, and just having that much fun in a movie. Just so cool. I really appreciate McTiernan's point of view. I know McTiernan's had some ups and downs in his career, but I think he really goes for it with the action. And I'm not super big on some of the sequels and where the series goes, but I'm really excited. Like you for The Predator. Again, it's gonna be tricky trying to have a world where there's Predator, Predators, and the Predator in it. But I don't know, Shane Black. I mean, what a perfect choice to make this movie. And of course, he wrote the screenplay with Fred Dekker, who we'll be talking about later, with an '87 movie. What a perfect duo, right? To cook up another movie together, and I can't wait. It's gonna be awesome. I'm knocking on wood that it will be, but I'm sure it will be. How could it not be? Because I love Shane Black movies. I think he's great.
Yeah, he's really terrific. I'm a big Shane Black fan, and I was a fan of Iron Man. I'm not like the biggest Marvel guy, so I know that some people will disagree with me on that, but it did feel like a Shane Black movie, and of course I loved Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and just about everything he's written. So I'm looking forward to The Predator this year.
Oh, for sure. I mean, his Iron Man is definitely, for me, the best of the three, because I know it's not like faithful to any of the comic books, and that upsets people. But for a movie, for a Shane Black movie, that's a superhero movie. I think it's pretty cool, and I don't say that a lot about about comic book movies. So it just really stuck with me. All right. On the same day as Predator, there was a bounty of riches because there were two great movies. Was another movie that I also fell in love with, and here is a TV spot.
Women, a mistake? Or did he do it to us on purpose?
Jack Nicholson is the devil you always knew he could be.
Happy birthday.
And Cher, Susan Sarandon, and Michelle Pfeiffer are the witches of Eastwick.
Hocus pocus.
The Witches of Eastwick. Rated R. Now playing at a theater near you.
Okay, that's a TV spot for The Witches of Eastwick. A little bit different in tone. It's more of a comedy, I would say. It's not really an action movie. It's not really. I guess there's some horror elements to it because, yeah, like the title suggests, there are witches in the movie. But it's definitely more of a comedy about characters, about some big crazy things that might happen between these characters, and really, it's a movie about. I'm not going to go into the plot because everyone knows what this movie is about. It's really the Jack Nicholson show. It's the Cher show. It's the Susan Sarandon show. And the Michelle Pfeiffer show. I don't care what the movie is. Like, if you put these actors in a movie together, I'll enjoy the hell out of it because these are all great people, great actors that I absolutely love for many, many reasons. And how lucky are we to have a movie where all four of them in together playing off each other? It's like, I don't care if the movie has things in it that that might be questionable or whatever. I just enjoy the hell out of it. I read the book, and the movie is a bit different from the book, of course, as movies should be, a bit different from their source material. I don't think movies and books should always be the same. I mean, I think they have to kind of veer off and do their own thing. I think in this case, this movie is a bit more produced than some of the other '87 movies, so there's a lot more money behind it, and there's a lot more bigger special effects and stuff that happens, especially later in the movie. So it goes off and does its own thing. But I just having these actors and having Jack Nicholson playing ostensibly the devil in a movie is just perfection to me. Cher, I love for many reasons. She had quite the year in 1987 with this movie, with Suspect, and with Moonstruck, of course, the movie she won the Academy Award for in 1987. I think, to me, she's great in all three movies, and she's also different in each of those movies, which is kind of awesome. And so I think she's beautifully cast in the movie. Susan Sarandon, who I loved, and I still, admire, even though I know some people have problems with her politically, and I understand all of that. So, but I try to separate that a bit. because I think Susan Sarandon is a tremendous actress, and I think she's still delivering great performances. She was nominated for that Feud show. I think she may have lost to somebody, but she was great, and I think she's well cast here as someone who's kind of a music teacher, a dowdy music teacher who kind of comes into her own because of this devil character. And then you have Michelle Pfeiffer, who's luminous as always and glorious and beautiful and everything. And she's also a strong, in her own way, character who's perceived as weak. And I just like the way the characters play off of each other so much in this movie and how different they are from each other. Yet they're friends and then have to come together to stop something that they created. I don't know. I always loved it. I could talk about it more. We have a lot of movies to talk about, so I have to skip over some things. But I feel like it's a well-written movie, even if it's, George Miller directed this movie, and George Miller, of course, is known more for his big, outlandish Mad Max movies. I'm not quite into those movies because I'm not really into post-apocalyptic movies, but for me, George Miller made a great movie, a great comedy that I go back to a lot, and it's on Blu-ray. I think it's double featured with Practical Magic on Blu-ray, another witch movie. And my wife likes that one, and I think it's enjoyable. But I really do love The Witches of Eastwick, and I went to see it a couple times in theaters that summer because I just felt like it was just perfect, a perfect comedy for me, and very adult comedy too, which I liked seeing as a teenager or not even a teenager yet, 12-year-old. So, which was nice. I don't think we have enough of those kinds of movies anymore, like comedies like that, just aimed for adults. So that was June 12th. Now let's get into June 19. Benji the Hunted opened. June 19. I think I saw that in the theater, of course. I don't know why. I think it's because it played at the Walker, and I went and I snuck in to see a lot of movies, of course, because that's what you do when you're 12 or even older. I just want to spend the day in the movies. And that day, I saw one of the movies I saw was Benji. Another movie I saw that day was very different from Benji. Here's the TV spot.
He's waiting, and you are the target. Obsession as you've never known it. Terror as you've never felt it. Strip to Kill, rated R.
Okay, that's the TV spot for Strip to Kill. Which is nothing like Benji, of course. Kat Shea is a great genre filmmaker who I feel like should be celebrated more. It's exactly what you think it is, the kind of movie. It's a stripper, there's a killer, and a cop undercover, and you kind of it's an obvious plot, but for me, it's how Kat Shea tells the story, how there are feminist undertones to it, and just how it's it's not just when you watch genre films that try to say things while being entertaining. Those are the kind of perfect movies to me. So I always liked Strip to Kill a lot. She made some other films that I like a lot more, like her sequel to Carrie, The Rage, Carrie 2. I think that's a very underrated sequel. And she made Poison Ivy. She makes a lot of thrillers that I really like. And she made another movie, a stripper movie called Dance of the Damned, about a mulleted vampire and a stripper. And I really like that movie. It's very underrated. But her Strip to Kill, I think, is a very good, solid genre movie, and it's well made. It has a very unique vibe to it. Very much of that late '80s kind of Corman, because Corman produced it. Vibe is low budget, but she makes the most out of her budget, and she tells the story she wants to tell pretty well. And I liked it a lot when I was a kid. I thought it was very well done. And I do think Kat Shea needs to be making movies still, and I know she teaches film now, but let's get Kat Shea up on the screen again. Did I ask you what? Did you see Strip to Kill?
I haven't seen Strip to Kill. It's been on my list for a long time, and I think it came out on Blu-ray a couple of years ago. Did it, or am I thinking of something else?
It came out on Blu-ray, yeah. It did.
Yeah, I definitely want to see that movie, and I've heard
Okay,
I've heard good things about that film. Over the years, so it's got a pretty good reputation. So I definitely want to see it.
Cool. Okay, so I'm going to get to another June 19 title. This one I absolutely love. I want to hear your thoughts on it first before I go into it. Here is the TV spot.
C.D. Bales has a small problem.
Hey, big nose.
He can handle every situation
15 love.
except the one that matters most.
Roxanne.
Maybe you'd like some wine with your nose. Jeez.
This time I want you to do it, Dave. I want you to cut the thing off.
Tell Roxanne that you love her.
Steve Martin, Daryl Hannah,
Say something romantic.
There, darling.
Roxanne, rated PG. Starts Friday at select theaters.
Roxanne, directed by Fred Shepsey. Is that his name?
Sure.
Starring.
I'm not really bad.
Sure.
I'm really bad with that name.
Skeps. Anyway, starring Steve Martin, Daryl Hannah, and what was the man's name from Top Gun? Slider from Top Gun.
Oh,
Do you remember?
Rick Rossovich?
Rick Rossovich. Yes, he's so good in this movie. Yeah, this is a lot of fun. This is a take on Cyrano de Bergerac with Steve Martin in the Cyrano role, and I believe he wrote the screenplay for this movie too. It's a very fun movie with a lot of heart. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but yeah, all in all, a winning film. It's just one that it's kind of slipped away from me for a while. I haven't seen it in oh gosh, at least 15 years, but I do remember watching it quite a bit on VHS back in the day. Lots of fun. Did like that movie quite a bit. What about you?
I saw this. I think this is the third movie I saw the same day as Benji the Hunted and Strip to Kill and Roxanne. I had quite a day That's why I really wanted to talk about summer '87 movies, because there were so many movies that came out and that I just really enjoyed and for different reasons. And this is a romantic comedy. I know it's a genre that not a lot of people love, but I think if you give Roxanne a try, you might actually fall in love with this movie. Steve Martin, amazing as always, really funny here. He wrote the screenplay for it. It's just a really smart, funny movie. And there's not a lot of that when you're making movies based around a silly comedian type guy. But he really is that guy. He really is the smart, funny guy, and it's great to see that in film. See characters kind of relate to each other on different levels, not just on a sappy romantic level, but an intellectual level and in other ways. And because the screenplay is so smart and full of many witty replies and remarks and just the way Steve Martin could pull those off, and you just kind of fall in love with that. I mean, I just love Steve Martin. I love Daryl Hannah. I think they're well matched in the movie. And yeah, I'm not sure if I initially believed that, because I just always associated Daryl Hannah before this with playing the girl and just the girl in the movie, and but here I feel like she really comes more into her own. She was in Splash and she had a fun character there, but I feel like as a romantic comedy, she's someone who's a bit more interesting in this one, and I liked seeing that with her. I think she has it in her to be someone who could trade barbs with Steve Martin, and something that I think a lot of actors would probably be intimidated by, someone as smart playing opposite someone as smart as Steve Martin and someone as funny as Steve Martin. But I think they're well suited, and of course she's gorgeous. That helps too. But I don't know, I just really love the two of them, and I really bought the romance there. And you could see Steve Martin's Longing. And so, like, it's a character you can identify with easily because we all, at some point in our lives, I feel like we long for someone who we thought didn't think would see us in that way, or just thought we weren't attractive enough. And I just really love that, and I really, it's a romantic comedy that I definitely go back to over and over. I have it on Blu-ray. It's well presented on Blu-ray from Sony. Put it out, I believe. So it's good to if you want to catch up with some of your '87 movies in high definition. It's a good one to own, I think. And I definitely watched a lot on VHS at the Columbia VHS, the RCA Columbia VHS, and I remember it was kind of pretty beat up from watching it so much. So it was nice to upgrade it to a Blu-ray for sure. So definitely one of my favorite movies of 1987, I would say. I would make my top 10 list even, because I think it just kind of stays with me, and I feel like I'm quoting it often, like Worms, Roxanne, like the Rick Rossovich, who's generally always the dummy, I guess, in movies, and he is that here, but he does it in such a funny way in this one, and the movie doesn't really make fun of him, but you kind of laugh along with him. But I think I just do remember certain scenes that stick with me, and I find myself quoting them a lot. And that was definitely one of the moments in the movie that I quote a lot. All right, let's move on to June 24th. That was a Wednesday, and this little movie came out. Here's the TV spot.
Now the greatest special effects movie ever made. Spaceballs. With strange aliens.
Pizza the Hut!
Magical powers.
How'd you do that? Oh, wow!
And amazing creatures.
Watch where you're sticking that thing!
Mel Brooks, John Candy,
Funny,
and Rick Moranis. Spaceballs, rated PG. Now playing. Check newspapers for a theater near you.
Spaceballs. This is Mel Brooks' movie. That is a takeoff of Star Wars. Of course, everyone knows that. Gosh, what can you say about Spaceballs? It's a very funny movie. It's got some classic bits. Rick Moranis is wonderful in this movie as Dark Helmet. And you've got a terrific cast. You've got Joan Rivers as the voice of the C-3PO character, but I can't remember her name. I can't remember her name in this movie.
Dot Matrix.
Dot Matrix. That's right. And you've got John Candy in a supporting role as Barf. He's the co-pilot in this film, and Bill Pullman. Wonderful cast, very funny. It's a very meta film, as Mel Brooks films tend to be, making fun of the merchandising for all of these films, and they talk about Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money is going to be the sequel, and I'm told that that's actually in development. Of course,
that's awesome.
I hope we see that. We'll see. Mel Brooks. I would never turn down the chance to see another Mel Brooks movie. Mm-hmm. Of course, we don't have John Candy with us anymore, so we don't have Joan Rivers either. But I'm sure that a fun movie could be made as a sequel to that picture. Mm-hmm. Lots of classic bits. Combing the Desert. George Weiner as kind of the assistant to Dark Helmet. Lots of good supporting performances. I think one of the people that definitely stands out in this movie is Rick Moranis, and it's too bad that we haven't seen much of him since the 80s, but mm-hmm. We do have this performance, and he's wonderful in this movie. All in all, a pretty solid film.
I know. I really miss Rick Moranis in movies. I think he officially retired like 20 years ago, after he did Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves. He showed up in kind of like little bits here and there, and he revived his Bob McKenzie character in a TV thing, and he did a lot of voice work since then. But I know I think he wanted to spend more time with his family. It might have been something bad that happened, and so he had to spend more time with his family. I can't remember exactly what the story is, but I remember reading about something like that. He was widowed, that's what it was, and which is really sad and tragic. But yeah, we do need him more in movies, and so he's really funny in Spaceballs. It's one of those movies that I liked when I was, I guess I liked it when it came out because I wasn't a big Star Wars guy, like I mentioned earlier. So I kind of liked it, but it wasn't something that I would go back to that often. But as years went on, I definitely enjoy it and appreciate it more. There's a lot of funny bits in the movie, and of course when you have a cast like that and really funny people in it, and you want to laugh, you'll go back to it, and you can find a lot of big laughs in Spaceballs. And of course, Daphne Zuniga's in it, so that's reason enough to watch Spaceballs because Daphne Zuniga's in it, and I like her and everything. She should have been in more stuff too. I feel like it's weird her career didn't really take off after Spaceballs, which is sad because I mean she's had a good career, but not in a leading capacity as much.
Mm-hmm.
Mel Brooks cast her in The Fly 2 after this because he produced the Fly movies, and she had a couple of leading roles, but just nothing that took off. And The Fly 2 wasn't a success like the first one, but I liked her in that too, and I do follow her career still. But hopefully she's back on the big screen too, along with a lot of others who time tends to forget as much. Spaceballs. I think it's fun, and I do like Mel Brooks comedies. He's a funny guy, of course, and a treasure. All right, June 26th had a few movies. Jean de Florette came out. I saw that in the theater. Saw it at the Paris Theater, New York City. Sleepwalk came out, and Straight to Hell, the Alex Cox movie, came out. Two other movies came out. This is the end of June. I think these are two movies that you mentioned you wanted to talk about. So here is the trailer for the first one.
Dragnet. The story you are about to see is true. Only the names have been changed to protect the innocent. For instance, Dan Aykroyd is Sergeant Joe Friday. Tom Hanks is Detective Pep Streebek.
Your new partner. There's a dress code for detectives in robbery homicide. Section 3-605, .10, .20, .22, .24, .70, .80. My name's Friday. Take a lot of kidding about that? Almost never.
You know the kinds of things that can fall into an industrial sausage press? Not excluding rodent hairs, bug excrement.
I hate you, Streebek.
You got a lot of repressed feelings, don't you, Friday? Must be what keeps your hair up.
Police officers, ma'am.
Why couldn't you have got here before that big, bad, stupid-looking piece of sewage breath stole my white wedding dress?
Just the facts, ma'am.
We need to ask you a few questions.
Their job.
You know, Friday, I think we finally found your look.
To enforce the laws.
This is shaping up to be a little more than just a series of simple robberies.
And preserve the safety of decent citizens.
Streebek! I found the snake!
Sure, this city isn't perfect. We need a smut-free life for all of our citizens. Cleaner streets, better schools, a good hockey team.
Dragnet. A new generation of courage.
Thank God it's Friday!
Just the facts, ma'am.
This movie for me is kind of a nostalgic movie where I look back on it more fondly than maybe it deserves. It's a fun movie. It's a lot of fun. It's not one of the best movies of the summer, but I do like the film, and for me, it's kind of like it coincides with some of my interests in film, which were burgeoning at the time. It was the first movie that was on the cover of Premiere Magazine, and I subscribed to that. I started subscribing to that magazine as soon as I heard about it, and they had the little inserts with the quarter page movie posters of all the films that were coming out, and that was a lot of fun. As I recall, this was also the first safe sex movie. This was one where Tom Hanks, his character, he's waking up after having had sex with a young woman, and he takes the box of condoms, and it's empty, and so he decides not to do it. And so I remember that was kind of a big deal at the time, because we're in the first film that I know of that a big budget film anyway, that was, you know, affected by the AIDS epidemic of the 80s. What the movie does is it takes kind of the 60s sensibility of Dragnet with Jack Webb, and it transplants it to the 1980s, and Dan Aykroyd plays his nephew, who's Joe Friday, and he's a very straight-laced character, and he does a very good impression of Joe Friday in this movie. I think, though, that the real fun of this movie is how he plays off with Tom Hanks, who's his partner in this film. His name is Pep Strebeck in this movie. And I know that the original choice for this role was going to be Albert Brooks. Yeah, and I think that you know, in another universe, I'd love to see that film. I'd love to see how they made Albert Brooks play off Dan Aykroyd, because I know that they wouldn't be able to do it in quite the same way, you know, because he's a little older character, and Tom Hanks plays him as kind of like a goofy hipster type character, as he's sort of described in the movie. Yeah. But those two were so good together in the opening of Twilight Zone the movie that I would love to see. That's right. Yeah. I would love to see something that was like straight comedy with the two of them together. So I think that Tom Hanks just brings a lot of the fun to this movie. It's a silly movie. Some of the actors are doing kind of silly affectations and voices, like Christopher Plummer and Dabney Coleman. It is a lot of fun, but not probably one that's on, you know, like, it probably wouldn't make my top list of the summer. But looking back on it, I can see, you know, like, I guess if you were, I was just a kid watching it, so I didn't really understand, like, the disconnect between, like, if you were a fan of Dragnet, the TV show with Jack Webb, and then you go see the movie version of it in the theater. I would probably consider it sacrilege because of the attitude that it brings, and it kind of embraces its PG-13 rating. Like, a lot of movies that are PG-13 now are pretty safe, but this one, it's pretty hard PG-13. Like, the humor in it is pretty sexual, and there's this scene where they're in a strip club, and the women are just wearing the pasties over them, and so it would be kind of shocking if you went to this movie thinking you were going to get Jack Webb's Dragnet. And so, you know, like, as a kid, you don't really get that, but now I see that there would be quite a disconnect there. But all in all, a fun film, and it also has the famous pagan group. They throw out the pagan cards. People Against Goodness and Normalcy is the name of their group. And I've been looking on Etsy, and I've been looking at all sorts of places to see if anyone has printed up these pagan cards, because I would buy them, but I have not found anyone that will sell these pagan cards to me.
Maybe you need to get it made.
I need to learn some graphic designing skills and maybe make these pagan cards for myself.
Yeah, go to graphic design school, get a diploma, and then start making it. That'd be worth it. Believe it or not, this is one of the few movies, and I saw it in '87, but this is one of the few movies that I've only seen once. So I only saw it. I saw it in the theater 30 years ago, but I don't remember a lot of it because of that. Because, you know, I'm 42 now. So yeah, I do remember there being a rap song in it.
Yes.
And they both rap in it, Tom Hanks and Dan Aykroyd. So that's memorable. Trying to think of what else I would remember. But God, I should play some of the rap music right now. I'm gonna edit in. Listen to some of this. This is my thoughts on the film. There's a rap song in it.
Well, I'm here tonight to rap about your rights, 'cause right now you're in trouble.
I hope you enjoy that. Yeah, so I will definitely be watching it again since I need to refresh my memory on this movie. It's on Blu-ray, I think, right? I think Universal put it out on Blu-ray recently.
If it is, I missed it. I actually have the Voodoo copy.
Okay.
And that's what I watched here recently. Yes, you mentioned the rap song, which was written by Dan Aykroyd and I believe it's his brother Peter Aykroyd. I can't remember, but Dan Aykroyd's hand is very, present in this film. So it's kind of endearing that there is a that there is a rap song over the end credits where the leads perform the rap duties, and one of them is multiple Academy Award winner Tom Hanks.
I know, yeah.
And it also has a fun score by The Art of Noise, which is another one of the appeals to the movie.
Yeah, I like them. Yeah, not on Blu-ray. Sorry, guys. I'm sorry to get your hopes up. Not on Blu-ray. But yeah, I'm very thankful for PG-13 movies of 1987 because they sometimes would stretch what you could do with a PG-13 rating, which is nice. Sometimes that meant boobs. Which are cool. All right, so this is an R-rated movie coming up, a very R-rated movie, and here is the VHS trailer for it.
Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket. The best war movie ever made. J. Scott, Toronto Globe and Mail. Great filmmaking. I've seen it twice. Gene Siskel, Chicago Tribune. A bombshell. The flip side of Platoon. Susan Granger, WMCA Radio, New York City. Overpowers Platoon, Deer Hunter, and Apocalypse Now. Bobby Wygant, KXAS-TV, Dallas. Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket. Rated R. Bring it home on video cassette.
So I remember Full Metal Jacket coming out, and the level of anticipation for this movie was very, very high because it was a Vietnam movie, and Stanley Kubrick was probably the most respected director alive, and so there have been so many Vietnam movies that had come already, particularly Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now, which was definitely a masterpiece. And so you're thinking that if Stanley Kubrick is attacking this subject matter, that you're really in for something special, and maybe that it could even, eclipse or be even better than Apocalypse Now. And so the movie comes out, and it's got this kind of 2 or maybe 3-part structure where you're following one character and his experience in this bit of the war. He's going to boot camp. It's Private Joker, who's played by Matthew Modine, and then in the second part of the film, it's when it's dealing with him reporting on the goings on in the film, and then the third part is actual combat, and it's sort of it takes place in this very vast part of town where you really get the sense of immersion in it because the film really gives you the scope of like the buildings and kind of like long shots of like what's going on, and that if it's a set, it's a huge set, but it's probably just set dressed buildings that are wherever it was shot. And the film is an interesting film because I can't really think of another film that's quite like this, where the first 45 minutes of the film, which takes place with Arlie Ermy as the drill sergeant, and you've also got Vincent D'Onofrio in this movie as Private Pyle, who's this character who's really not cut out for going to the Marines, and he doesn't do well, and he's picked on. And the first 45 minutes of this movie just really kind of overshadows the rest of it, to the point where, like going back, and when you think about Full Metal Jacket, what do you think of? You think of the first 45 minutes. They're so good. The first 45 minutes of this movie with Arlie Ermy, it's sort of like there's something missing after that. But the rest of the film is very good, particularly the part at the end where they're dealing with the sniper, and they're kind of getting picked off one by one. And you've got some other fine actors in in the platoon. You've got Adam Baldwin as Animal Mother, and Dorian Harewood, and Arliss Howard is in it as well. It's a very good movie, but I think that there was kind of a feeling of disappointment after the movie came out, maybe a little bit, because it wasn't something that just wowed you like Apocalypse Now did. But a very good Stanley Kubrick movie. It has this very kind of ominous score, which is used very sparingly. And I love that. It really sets the mood, and that's used in the first part and in the last part. So yeah, it's not one of my favorite Stanley Kubrick movies, but it is a very good movie. Matthew Modine's character is kind of an appropriate person to sort of follow through this movie, because this is not the Paths of Glory Stanley Kubrick. This is more of a disillusioned look at Vietnam and at war, and at the war machine, the machinery of war. He has this peace symbol on his uniform, and he also has "Born to Kill" written on his helmet. So he's somebody who looks at what he's in with a fair degree of irony. He says something about like always wanting to go to exotic locales and meeting people there and then killing them. So you've got that kind of an interesting point of view there, and I think it's sort of appropriate for Kubrick, because this is such a disillusioned look at war, and it does end with everybody walking and singing the Mickey Mouse theme, which kind of tells you a little bit about Kubrick's attitude towards the war. Yeah, it's a very good movie, but not one of my favorite Stanley Kubrick films.
Yeah, pretty much the same way. I think it's solid for a war movie. And again, like I mentioned earlier, I'm not big into war movies, but definitely not one of my favorite movies of Stanley Kubrick that I go back to that often. So I haven't watched this one that much. I saw it in the theater, and it definitely made an impression. And like everyone else, that the scenes earlier on, those first 45 minutes, really stick with you. And especially after the movie's over, that's the kind of the scenes you think about the most. And I kind of wish, in a way, that it was like a shorter movie, so I could just it would have been just that, and then going to war. But I don't know. I did need to reevaluate it probably, because it's been a while. I don't think I own it on any format. I don't think I've ever owned it on any format. I know I rented it when I went through Stanley Kubrick's movies again at some point in my life. So it's probably time to reevaluate it. I should really own all of his movies on Blu-ray. They're all worthy of being on a Blu-ray, but at some point I will. I do remember Matthew Modine, and he was fairly good, like I said, a fairly good person to follow through the movie. He's an actor I always liked, so. I think critics also aligned a bit with of what we're talking about today in our point of view on it. And generally, people feel like it's a movie that they were a little bit let down by, instead of riveted by throughout. But I think there's definitely things you could take away from it that you really like, which is really good. And it's true of a lot of Kubrick's films. There are definitely things you will remember after you see the film. There's a lot of striking images in his movies, and he's really good at creating that, of course, and creating a mood and a setting. And we'll check it out again for sure. Okay, so that was June. I think we should take a bit of a break, and we'll be back right after this.
You stole my heart. You were all that I anticipated. I wanted you every part, but I knew love would be complicated. I began to touch, but you wouldn't let it. It never seemed to be the right time. I started to give up, down to the limit, and then you changed your mind, oh, and we began to rock, steady, steady rocking all night long, and we began to rock, steady, rocking till the break of dawn. Rock, steady, steady rocking all night long. Rock, steady, rocking till the break of dawn.
Okay, we're back. I hope you enjoyed that. I had to go get myself some more scotch. You know, I have my kitchen door is one of those swinging doors. So anytime I open it up, because I have it closed now, so you don't hear the refrigerator, because I'm podcasting from my living room. Anytime I use one of those swinging doors, I always think of Three's Company, and it makes me happy. I think of all the wackiness that can ensue, like if we're listening to a conversation from the other side of the swinging door in the kitchen. It's like just listening to things and then like overhearing something and just taking it the wrong way and then thinking something like somebody's doing something naughty that I shouldn't be doing. I just wish I had moments. I wish my house where I live was like their apartment, basically. If it was, life would be amazing. Anyway, let's get into July 1st. And here is the TV spot for our first film.
From Touchstone Pictures, 3 normal kids, 1 dependable babysitter. What could possibly go wrong?
Everything. Any problems? No, not really.
Adventures in Babysitting, rated PG-13.
One show sneak preview Friday night. Check your local newspaper for showtime.
Okay, that is the TV spot for Adventures in Babysitting, of course. And this is a movie that you guys who listen to the podcast, follow the podcast, know I already love and have a very strong affinity for. It's a movie that I watched 6 or 7 times in theaters when it came out. Which is a lot. I don't go see movies generally 7 times in a theater. But Adventures in Babysitting was the movie of the summer to see over and over. Especially when I didn't want summer to end. It played for a long time. It's one of those movies that just kept playing for a long time. This is something that happened in 1987 that doesn't happen anymore. Movies would play for months. They would have like a shelf life, basically. They would just play. And you would go see them. Maybe not the same theater that you originally saw it at, because they'd move around a little bit. But and especially because the summer had a lot of titles in it, so they would shift around a little bit. But I would follow it wherever it went. So I saw it in a few theaters. It played up the block from me. Like I said earlier, it played. I saw it for the second time. No, for the first time I saw it. It was at the RKO Kingsway, because that's where I saw Untouchables the second time. And so Adventures in Babysitting and The Untouchables was my first experience with it. And it just really... I remember going to see it with my next-door neighbor. And they had 2 kids. Me, my sister, my grandmother, and our next-door neighbor kids. They're Alfie and Lori. We all went to see it together, and it just just blew me away, because it was everything I wanted in a teen movie, and I know a lot of people do have strong feelings for it. I think a lot of people share a love for it for me, it's because of Elizabeth Shue's performance. for being one of those movies where it all happens over a night. That's another reason why I love it. It's very much a teen version of After Hours, which some of the critics of the time pointed out. I remember reading a lot of the reviews and cutting out the reviews and cutting out the ad for it in the newspapers and magazines, going through the magazines and doing all of that, cutting out many photos of Elizabeth Shue, and it just made me happy every time I saw it. Just really, like, if I was feeling a little sad, okay, go see Adventures of Babysitting, and that will make me happy, and it did. And I've talked about on the podcast how I went when it came out on video. I was determined to buy it, but I couldn't afford it because, I didn't have much money as a kid, of course. So I waited until it was previously viewed, but theaters, video stores at the time weren't giving up their copy. It was a good renter, probably. So I just kept going to all these video stores and demanding them for them to sell me their copy of Adventures of Babysitting. And eventually somebody did, because I kept bothering them. Like, here already, and I wore out that tape. I remember that tape so well, and I bought another copy of it, brand new, when it was cheaper, and then of course later on DVD and then Blu-ray. I don't think I ever owned it on Laserdisc. I'm not sure if it was on laser. It probably was, but I just a lot of my lasers were from the 90s, like 90s releases. Because when I had lasers, like around 93. But if it was on Laserdisc, I should have owned it, because I have the original poster. I had the standee the standee for the movie, the big 5-foot standee for it or whatever it was. And then it got some damage, and I only kept the title part of it, which I still have, and now it's in my kids' playroom. I don't have anything else from them. I think I have the promotional, I have lobby cards for it and stuff like that, but I don't have anything else. I don't think there was a lot of promotional material for the movie. It was like a button. That's about it. But if there were any other things for Adventures of Babysitting, if you know of any other promotional material for Adventures of Babysitting, letting me know. I'm still a huge fan of it. What are your thoughts?
Had the biggest crush on Elizabeth Shue, of course, as hopefully
she is mine.
Yeah, anybody who is kind of a movie nerd, and watched movies in the 80s and loves movies in the 80s should definitely have a crush on this young woman. I do enjoy the movie quite a bit. I like that it has like this element of like real danger to it. At the beginning, when she is driving the station wagon into Chicago, and I know that you like to drive, but the thought of driving into Chicago in a station wagon full of kids and having a tire blowout on the highway without a spare, that terrifies me. So I was definitely a little nervous when she had to cross all the lanes to pull over. But that's not the only danger, of course. They get shot at. They have to escape gangsters, and her friend who they're trying to pick up, Penelope Ann Miller, is that her name?
That's her.
Yeah. She's also experiencing some danger at the bus station with a guy who's kind of comically, but showing that he has a gun several times. As she's talking on the phone. It's a lot of fun. Another movie that kind of wouldn't have the same kind of danger or salty language if it was made today, and I believe it was made recently. I think there was a Disney Channel movie version of this that came out fairly recently. I'd have to look that one up, but I have not seen it, but I would be interested to see how they water it down and change it. Mm-hmm. And another thing about this movie, which kind of blew my mind, was, it came out a week after Full Metal Jacket, or a few days after Full Metal Jacket. It also has Vincent D'Onofrio in it.
That's right. Very, very different.
A very physically different Vincent D'Onofrio, where he has, a shaven head in Full Metal Jacket, and he's probably got 50 pounds extra, maybe, in that movie. And here he's, kind of muscular, and he's kind of the epitome of Thor, which is the young girl. That's her favorite superhero, and she thinks he's Thor, this guy who owns a garage. So it definitely blew my mind to know that those actors were the same person. But I didn't realize probably at the time that Full Metal Jacket was shot considerably earlier than Adventures in Babysitting, would be my guess, because I'm sure Stanley Kubrick took a long time to gestate the films in terms of editing. That's my guess.
Yeah,
but
I think he shot that movie for like a year, right? I feel like something like that crazy, and then he took like another year to edit it, at least.
But yeah, those are my thoughts on the movie. Some of the movie it's a little hard to watch for me. I don't love it as much as you do, but like the part where when they go out on stage and do the blues song, that kind of makes me nervous as well.
I love it. I'm not apologizing for that.
That's a little hard to watch for me, but it's got a solid cast. Of course, Elizabeth Shue, love her so much.
Every good teen movie needs like a musical sequence, and that's the one where, and also it's not just like it's also not a throwaway scene, because they set up right away in the beginning that Elizabeth Shue likes to sing, and she's not, and in the first scene she's lip syncing, and because she can't sing, and then suddenly she's forced to sing in the movie. In the midway, it's right at the midway point of the movie too, like exactly in the middle, and she's forced to sing because it's just another way to get her character to do something she's not used to doing, and to show another side of herself. And it turns out she can sing. She's not like a great songstress or anything, but she can sing, and she gets the crowd really going, and yeah, I could see how that scene might be touchy, in some ways. But I don't know, to me, because it's such a character scene, it's such a strong character scene, that it really gets me going, and I'm right there with all the kids, and I just want to be one of them up on the stage singing, Babysitting Blues, and completely silly, but also I think there's a lot of heart in that scene, and in this movie in general. It's like throughout this movie. There's so much heart to it, and I just love that. And again, like reiterating that I love movies set over the course of one night, and this is like the perfect movie that epitomizes that. It's like a rush to the finish line, getting home before the parents get there, and trying to solve all your problems along the way, and I think as a teenager, as a budding teenager, I was 12, just falling in love with the characters, and then just wanting to be part of that crazy journey. It's like it's perfect for a teenager, and even as an adult, I think it still works. And my son, I watched it with my son, and he likes it, and he finds it a lot of fun. It's a PG-13 movie. There's some foul language. There's some there's some stuff in it, but it's not like a movie that you can't show to a kid. I don't think there's anything in it that really is that objectionable, other than some of the language. But hey, there's language in life, and kids gotta need to know about it. So I just do love it, and it's one of those movies I'll be watching until I'm dead, because I just find it so goddamn fun, and I'm happy I was able to bump into, when I worked at Kim's Video, I helped Daniel Waters out on a transaction, and the writer Daniel Waters, and when he noticed that I was a big fan of Adventures of Babysitting, I wrote it on some list somewhere in the store. He said that he was friends with the writer of Adventures of Babysitting, David Simpkins, and then he went to college with him. And then I told him how much I loved it, and then he's like, I'll pass it along to him, which is really cool. If he actually did that, it's cool if he didn't either. But it was actually just cool just being around Daniel Waters in general and talking about Heathers and everything. But I do have a strong love for that movie that will never go away. No matter what. It lasted 30 years and it's still going. It's crazy.
I love how it just starts right off with that song and the dancing. So it definitely ties in and does bring more resonance to that scene where she does the babysitting blues. But I don't know, something about being pulled on stage and having to improvise a song just kind of makes me just kind of petrified. I do want to point out a couple of different actors in this movie. I was watching the movie, and the guy who plays the tow truck driver who picks them up, like right as soon as they have their flat.
Yep.
That guy, I didn't know his name or anything like that, but his voice, he sounded very much like Tom Noonan. And I looked him up, and he's his brother. He's Tom Noonan's brother. His voice sounds very, very similar to him, and I'm sure we'll be talking about Tom Noonan a little later, the great method actor who plays Frankenstein's monster in the Monster Squad. But I don't know how you could be method and play that role. And also as her boyfriend in this movie, Bradley Whitford, who does double duty this summer in 1987 as being just a total scumbag in Adventures in Babysitting and in Revenge of the Nerds 2, Nerds in Paradise. He's also he kind of steps in for Ted McGinley in that movie, and the wonderful actor there, in an early role.
And he had a year. He was in one of the best movies of last year. He was in Get Out.
Yes,
as the father of the Allison Williams, which was kind of cool to see him in that role.
Yeah, and he capped off the year. I believe he was in the new movie with Tom Hanks, directed by Steven Spielberg, The Post. I believe he's in that.
Oh, he's having a good year too.
Yeah.
Tom Noonan. I knew about that connection because I looked up all these actors and he. It's funny enough, Tom Noonan and his brother, the actor in the movie, Pruitt. His name is Pruitt in the character. So I just call him Pruitt. They're both playwrights. Both Tom Noonan and him. Both I think well-known playwrights in their theater worlds, which is kind of fun. And I actually got to meet Tom Noonan once. I say him again at Kim's video. He was an interesting guy. I'm gonna put it that way. I used to buy his movies from him directly because he directed a few movies, like What Happened Was and The Wife, and I bought a few of his movies directly from him to sell at the store. So I used to deal with him directly. Interesting guy. I'll leave it at that.
Is he super tall?
Super tall. And yes, creepy. But nice. All right, moving on to our. There was another movie released on July 1st. Quite a day. Here's the TV spot.
Steven Spielberg presents Inner Space, when test pilot Tuck Pendleton gets miniaturized and injected into Jack Butter. I'm possessed! Together, they'll launch the summer's wildest adventure.
Try to stay calm, Jack! Kicking more cows! Jack Butter to the rescue!
Dennis Quaid, Martin Short, Inner Space, directed by Joe Dante, rated PG. Starts Wednesday, July 1st at a theater near you.
Okay, Inner Space. So, when you told me about this podcast and you wanted me to do Summer of 1987 movies, I did rewatch a few of these films. And the one that I had the most fun revisiting was definitely Inner Space. Stars Martin Short and Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan, directed by Joe Dante. And screenplay, one of the writers is Jeffrey Boehm, who does great dialogue. This is an Amblin production, so Steven Spielberg produced this film. It was a very hyped film. I don't think you'll probably know, a little bit better about the box office, but I don't think it quite, reached the expectations of the film upon release, because I do remember it was being quite hyped when it came out. But basically, the film is there's a scientific experiment. Dennis Quaid is miniaturized. He's supposed to go into the body of a rabbit, but something happens. There's some nefarious deeds going on. He gets injected into the buttocks of Martin Short, who is a hypochondriac character who, through his relationship with Dennis Quaid, who he's able to communicate with, he becomes, much more confident man, and they help each other out because Dennis Quaid is in love with Meg Ryan, who has left him. And this movie, directed by Joe Dante, it definitely has his sensibilities in the film. He's kind of an encyclopedia of film knowledge, but particularly his knowledge of like Looney Tunes and cartoons that comes out through the film. There's some fantastic effects work in this movie. The miniaturization stuff when Dennis Quaid is inside of Martin Short's body. There's also a scene where Dennis Quaid stimulates or with electrical shocks Martin Short's face, and he changes into a different character. He changes into Robert Picardo, and in so doing, they have this great scene where he's kind of undergoing the transformation, and everyone is quite grossed out by it. And the work is done by Rob Bottin, who I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit. But fantastic effects work. Kevin McCarthy is hilarious in this movie. I rewatched this movie and there's a lot of laugh out loud scenes. Kevin McCarthy does quite a bit with his delivery, and just in general, this is a really, really fun movie. I loved it. I wished when it was over that there was more of this three, of Martin Short. I think he's used perfectly in this movie. Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan, they had such good chemistry. It has a lot of Joe Dante's kind of repertory of actors. You see Henry Gibson, you see Wendy Shaw, you see some other folks that have appeared in several of his movies, and just in general, it's a wonderful addition to Joe Dante's work.
Absolutely agreed. I mean, definitely one of my favorite movies of 1987, Inner Space. It just didn't get as much love as it should have back then. It was enjoyed I'm sure by people, but it didn't, it wasn't a big box office hit. I don't even think it made its money back in the theaters, because it was sort of on the higher budget. It was like $27 million budget, and it made $25 million at the box office. So considered not a successful movie, which is crazy to me because the effects are so good and the movies are so well made, and it's so entertaining. Like, why are people not? Why wasn't this a bigger hit? Why was this one of the biggest movies of 1987? What more do you want, people? Really, so gosh darn entertaining. So it's just kind of baffling to me that it just didn't catch on. But I loved it, absolutely loved it when it came out. Just the characters are so well. They play off of each other so well. Like Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan, of course, playing off each other so well if they fell in love, got married, and they were in, 3 movies together? I'm trying to think of how many movies they were in. They were in this one. They were in DOA. Was there a third movie? Not sure. Well, they were at least those 2 movies, and definitely a lot of chemistry there. But then the chemistry between Meg Ryan and Martin Short was there. They play off each other so well. And a lot of Dennis Quaid's performance is like, he's trapped probably in a small set and having to act against no one probably. So it's a pretty hard role for him to pull off. But I don't know, everyone does it so well, and I love the characterizations. I like that they all have these arcs to go through, and Joe Dante can pull off. He can pull off the comedy, he can pull off the action, he can pull off the science fiction elements and the effects, just make a movie just really enjoyable from beginning to end. And like you, like it's one of those movies when it's over, it's an exactly 120-minute movie. It's exactly 2 hours. I want it to be even longer. I want more adventures. I want them to keep going. And it ends on that note of Martin Short trying to off to the rescue again, right? And I just wanted a sequel. I wanted to see Interspace 2 and 3 and so on. But we never got that. It didn't do well. But a lot of those movies that don't do well, that are successful because they're so good, are just I appreciate them even more. It's the underdog, of course, and it's on Blu-ray. Warner Brothers put it out on Blu-ray, thankfully. And it looks really good on Blu-ray. I remember on VHS, it was one of the first VHS tapes to be presented in widescreen. And I had it on a widescreen VHS, even though we all back then had 4x3 TVs. So you were forced to watch it, because it's a 2.35 movie. You were forced to watch it smaller. But the filmmakers were like, this is the movie, the way the movie was shot. It wasn't presented in theaters, even on 70mm prints as well. Do you remember that? Back in '87, they actually had movies on 70mm, and a lot of the movies were presented that way, which was pretty awesome.
I do remember a few of them, but I don't remember that one being one. But that's wonderful. I do see some of these repertory screenings from time to time where movies are presented in 70mm that I had no idea were. Like right now, you see movies that are in 70mm that are just like epic kind of event pictures, like Dunkirk or something like that.
Right.
But like Life Force was in 70mm, and there was a screening of that fairly recently. That's something that I wish I lived in a bigger city for, so I could catch something like that.
I know. I don't think they do a lot of 70mm prints in New York City. I know Phantom Thread, I think, might have had one. It might have been released on 70mm in one theater, but I just wish that was something that happened more often, especially with these retro movies, with these older movies now. Just been amazing to watch them in that format. But I'll take what I can get. Interspace has always worked for me. I only saw it once in the theater, which is surprising to me since it was so entertaining, and I loved it when it came out. But I watched it so much on VHS, of course, and on later DVD and Blu-ray, of course. And I still watch it. And I watched it recently. I watched it on with my kid, who loves Interspace. He's getting really into science right now, and so we watched Interspace maybe a couple of months ago, and he just kind of loved it, which makes me happy because I didn't discover it until I was 12. But so he's got a head start on me, which is great. Love that movie, and just hope more people. I mean, I know. I think it's definitely being. I think 30 years now, it's seeing that appreciation more, and I know there's been screenings of it in LA and stuff. So I know it definitely has more appreciation than it did, but really, it's definitely one of the best movies of '87 for sure. All right, July 10th, Blood Diner came out. You Blood Diner fans, it's on Blu-ray now. Let's see what else. House 2, the second story, officially came out on July 10th in a few theaters, and then it didn't get a bigger push until late summer, on August 28th. But I remember seeing it in theaters on July 10th at the Kingsway. So that's where I saw it. And I wasn't a fan of House 2. I thought it was a big step down from House 1. But that's just me. O.C. and Stiggs, the Robert Altman teen comedy, came out on July 10th. I really need to revisit that. I remember liking that one. The Squeeze came out July 10th. I saw that in theaters with the Walker, of course. And Whistleblower came out, and Whitewater Summer came out, but it never came out in theaters anywhere near me. Did you see Whitewater Summer in theaters, perchance?
No, I didn't, and I actually have never seen that. That's a Kevin Bacon one, right?
The Kevin Bacon, Sean Astin, and a group of kids, and he leads them into the wild, and some bad stuff happens. It's a really really enjoyable movie, and I really liked it when it came out on VHS. But I just when I tried to find a theatrical for it, it never actually came out in New York. So it played somewhere because it made a few dollars at the box office somewhere, but not New York, sadly. And I don't think in LA either. So it played somewhere, maybe where there's white water. And another movie I'll talk about quickly. Here's a TV spot.
Nerds.
Last year we were messed with, yes, but we fought back and we won. We can do it again, guys.
It may take vision.
Can I get you a drink or something?
It may take guts. It may even take all summer.
I love you!
But once again, the odds will get even.
This is going to be a great year.
Revenge of the Nerds 2. Nerds in Paradise. Rated PG-13.
Starts Friday at theaters everywhere.
Okay, at the Walker, I saw this movie along with The Squeeze. It's Revenge of the Nerds Part 2, Nerds in Paradise. I'm a big fan of Revenge of the Nerds 1, so of course I had to go see Revenge of the Nerds 2. You want more of the same, right? And that's pretty much what it is, more of the same. It's not as funny, of course, as Revenge of the Nerds 1. I think part of that is because it's a little bit slightly watered down version of Revenge of the Nerds, which is like a pretty horny R-rated comedy. So part 2 is, I think, the PG-13 version of that. Of course, the nerds going to Florida to attend something with their fraternity, like a whole fraternity convention or something. And as you do, you go to Florida during spring break, and of course, zaniness ensues. And yeah, again, not quite as good as the original. It's missing some key elements. Anthony Edwards kind of has a smaller role in it because he didn't want to be in it. I think he was already he already moved on, and so he agreed to do it, but at a much smaller capacity. And so that's kind of missing from the film. And there's a couple of the characters from the first one that didn't make it over to the second one. So it's kind of a scaled down version of part 1. But I think it's fun, and it's for what it is. And like you mentioned earlier, Bradley Whitford is in it, playing the Ted McGinley role, and he's always fun playing the jerk. And just having them in that kind of setting, and all the shenanigans they get into, and Booger's quest with I think it's James Hong, right? He plays like the Miyagi of disgusting. Which that's kind of funny and silly and stupid, but perfect for turning your brain off for like an hour and a half and watch Revenge of the Nerds 2. I actually have the Revenge of the Nerds DVD box sets, as you should own, with all 4 Revenge of the Nerds movies, which are, of course, with each movie, the quality gets worse, in terms of the films, but I don't even remember most of the 3 and 4, but yeah, they're fun for what they are. The first one I think is, to me, a legit good teen comedy, and it always stays with me, and it's one of my could watch it over and over probably. And you just like the characters, and of course you want to follow the characters again in the second one. So that's what you get with Revenge of the Nerds 2. Nerds in Paradise, and also seen Ogre join the dark side. I remember the sequel having a lot of Star Warsy kind of Star Warsy stuff in the trailer, kind of presenting it as almost like a follow up in a Star Wars way. It was kind of silly.
Yeah, I felt like Revenge of the Nerds 2. It's clearly done by a different hand. Joe Roth, I believe, is the director.
Yeah.
And it's done with a lot less care for the characters and the story and the heart of the movie. And it definitely has its moments. I love that 38 Special song that plays in the film. But for me it's a pretty big disappointment.
Right.
But I do love Robert Carradine and all the guys that are in the film, and of course Curtis Armstrong. Yeah, it just has a few moments, but it's not one that I really want to revisit much. Whereas Revenge of the Nerds, the first one, Love it. Would watch it anytime.
Anytime, yeah. And that played at that was a screening you did, right? Was that played it there?
Yeah. We did that this summer, and we had Curtis Armstrong come and sign copies of his book, and we did a little Q&A and an intro with him, and he was a fun guy. Lots of fun. He and I went to the Woody Guthrie Museum. We spent like 3 hours there. He's a big music fan, and we had dinner before the big event. Wonderful guy. He's actually only the second person that I've tried to get, as in terms of like bringing in a celebrity guest. Mm-hmm. And each time I've gotten the person. The first one was
that's awesome.
Yeah. The first one was Heather Langenkamp for Nightmare on Elm Street, and then Curtis Armstrong this summer.
Well, those are two awesome people, and you get to hang out with Curtis Armstrong over the summer. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
that's a good summer to me. That's really cool. All right, so that was July 10th. July 17th had Eat the Peach, Good Morning Babylon, a little movie called Jaws for the Revenge, which I think is a fun movie, a fun bad movie. It's definitely a bad movie. Come on, guys, it's Jaws 4, but fun. A fun shark getting revenge over Christmas in I think it's the Bahamas.
Yes,
is that right? So it makes absolutely no sense. The movie, Michael Caine's in it. That's the movie where Michael Caine was making while he won his Oscar for Hannah and her Sisters, which is what you do, right? You follow up your Oscar with a Jaws movie. It's such a bad movie, but I actually enjoy it more than 3, which I like too. But in its own way, it's like it just makes kind of more sense to me. Like it's just like because it's so ridiculous. And then also the same day, Nowhere to Hide, Ping Pong, Rita, Sue, and Bob 2 came out. And then a little movie that I think we both enjoy. Here's a TV spot.
Everybody loves RoboCop. He's a stainless steel, unstoppable Clint Eastwood.
I really love that guy.
RoboCop is dead on, both as a thriller and an unexpected comedy. 2 thumbs up.
I like it!
Newsweek calls it slick, lively. Audiences will eat it up. RoboCop.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.
Rated R.
Now playing at a theater near you.
So, RoboCop, I had heard a little bit about this movie coming out, and my thought was, from the title, that it was going to be a kids' movie. Mm-hmm. And so I had it in my head, to kind of discount it. It sounded kind of dumb, a RoboCop. And I saw the movie and was just kind of blown away by the movie. And it's become, over the years, this is my favorite movie ever, RoboCop. This summer I went to see the film. It was shot in Dallas mostly, and we went to see it in at OCP headquarters in Dallas, and Peter Weller was there. Wow. This was an Alamo Drafthouse event. If you watch the movie and you see OCP headquarters, like that's City Hall in Dallas, but it's only, the building is only like 5 or 6 stories. The rest of it, to make it look like a skyscraper, they did matte paintings, and that was a tremendous amount of fun to see him. And I've seen him at a convention, and I actually ran into him one time while I was going to a movie in Dallas. Kind of a funny story. I asked the night before if this movie that I want to see, The Skin I Live In, if those times for that day were going to be good for the next day, and they said yes. And so we go there the next day, and lo and behold, the times were off. So we'd missed the show. So I was like, okay, let's go see The Descendants. So we go up there, and we're waiting, and it's a few minutes until the show's supposed to start, which is unusual that the theater isn't open, and they open the theater up, and this big crowd comes out, and there's Peter Weller, and he's standing right next to my girlfriend at the time, and I'm kind of freaking out, and I'm telling her Peter Weller out of the side of my mouth, and she's like, who? And the me that's the huge fan of RoboCop, is just kind of freaking out right there. And I believe that they showed Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai right before that. And I think it was an AFI Dallas or a Dallas film. I don't know what it was, presentation. And Peter Weller has some ties to Texas. He went to high school and college there. In Denton, I believe, is where he went to college. So I think that's part of the reason why he came back and did that special screening this summer. And yeah, the movie, it's an amazing movie. It's a movie where it's kind of like a little miracle. It's a low budget film, but all the elements came together. You have Paul Verhoeven, the Dutch director, I believe is his first, big movie in the United States. And you have this sensibility from a European perspective, which on American society, which I think kind of gave it a lot, an interesting perspective. So you have sort of an outsider to the culture coming in and making a film that's a satire of America, but it's so much more. It's an exploration of identity. And Peter Weller is amazing in the movie. The action is fantastic. Rob Bottin, the effects work he does in this movie and in The Thing are just, they're second to none. You have Nancy Allen. You have two of the best villains in any movie ever, and you got two of them here. It's an unusual pairing where you got two villains, two co-villains. You've got Ronnie Cox, who never played a villain before, and Dick Jones. And you also have Clarence Boddicker, played by Kurtwood Smith, who's so menacing in this movie. It's a tough movie, hard R that you now see in unrated prints, and that was the version we saw was the director's cut. But it's slightly cut in a couple of key moments in the movie. In 1987, the R cut, when the Ed 209 is shooting the guy in the boardroom, and also at the end where Robo and Kurtwood Smith, Clarence Boddicker have their final showdown. That's cut a little bit as well. But just a fantastic movie. I could just go on and on about this movie, and it's just got so many layers to it. So wonderful. Gosh, I'd love to hear what you have to say about it.
Well, as you know, when I went to your theater in Tulsa, I bought a few of those cool prints that you had of posters of screenings that you've done, and one of them was RoboCop, and it's a really cool looking artwork. And because my wife and I love RoboCop, we bought it, and she knew I really liked it, and it now hangs in our dining room. So we dine with RoboCop every night, and I love it. I mean, I love the movie because of it being, yes, a hard R-rated action movie, and it's something you could definitely enjoy as a kid or an adult. But because there's so much social commentary in it, and so much satire, and so many ideas that are thrown into the movie, and to make you think while you're enjoying, or you don't even have to think about because they're just there and you just kind of consume it. And it just unlike any other movie of the time, it really was ahead of its time, like many of the Verhoeven movies are. It's very much a movie of a perspective of American culture from a European's point of view, and that's one of the things about Verhoeven's movies that I absolutely love. Even a movie like Showgirls, which I think is absolutely brilliant as well, because it is that movie look at our culture from an outsider's point of view, and it is ridiculous if you look at it from another culture's point of view, especially Las Vegas and that whole scene. And the action movies of the time were violent, but this movie amps it up even more because you kind of have to do that if you're satirizing it. and it just really stays with you, and you just really root for Murphy. You really want to see Murphy dispose of the bad guys and to clean up the streets of Detroit. Although that still hasn't been done quite. I mean, Detroit is still not a great place. So maybe we do need a RoboCop really to solve our problems. I don't know. It just really is the perfect blend of action and science fiction and comedy and satire. It just really does so much within its time frame that other films will try to do like a third of it and not be as successful, you know. Just he can pull off a lot of things in his movies that just make me think and make me interested. And you know, I love. I think he's really well cast in this movie. Peter Weller. I think Nancy Allen's well cast. I think they play well off of each other. And you know, all these supporting roles, especially all the bad guys in the movie. There's a few. I like that. I like that the actor from Fame is one of the bad guys. His name is escaping me right now, but Paul.
Oh yes. Emil, I think, is his name in the movie.
Yeah. He's one of the bad guys, and he meets a very gruesome, very melty end, and it's just such a great film, and you know, they keep trying to duplicate it with sequels and remakes, and not one of those movies can come anywhere near the genius of RoboCop, because this is a movie that just can't be really be duplicated. It was of its time, even though it was a futuristic movie. But at the same time, it was a very much a 1987 movie, and I just love what it did, and I go back to it a lot. And you know, Criterion put it out on DVD. I don't think they ever put it out on Blu-ray. I think it's MGM property, so it's on Blu-ray through MGM, I believe. I know I have it on Blu-ray, but it's just you know, just a movie I love, and I don't think I'd ever get tired of it. So I don't think it's possible to get tired of RoboCop. Ronnie Cox is great. I mean, did he play any villains after this movie, or just played it?
He did. Yes, he played Cohagen in Total Recall.
Oh my God! Of course.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, how could I forget? Yeah, I played villains for Verhoeven. I mean, that's the way to go. Just being in a Verhoeven movie maybe is the way to go. I just love his movies so much. Yeah, and I really like his Dutch movies. I think fans of RoboCop and Total Recall and Basic Instinct and all those other movies should go back and enjoy look at his Dutch movies that he made. Specifically, like The Fourth Man, Spetters. He just made quite a few good ones. And I think they're really strong films, and you can see a lot of his ideas, a lot of his ideas about religion and sexuality, all in those movies, and very interesting films, and I think and a lot of strong images that kind of stay with me too. So I think he's definitely, for me, he's one of my favorite filmmakers, and I know for you, I think the same. And I think he's. When I saw RoboCop, I enjoyed it for what it was, the action movie. But I think as time goes on, I had an even more deeper appreciation of it, especially after seeing a lot of his films. And it's, to me, the perfect blend of getting a great filmmaker, making a great genre piece, and just make a genre piece even more like special, which is rare. I think there's not a lot of that happening. Especially nowadays, we get a lot of genre movies, but not a lot of them are special. I mean, they don't have. They maybe work on. Maybe the action is really good, but then the storyline is kind of weak, or the storyline isn't interesting, but some other, like, the acting isn't so special, or just not very thought provoking. But I think when you have all the gears working and all the pistons working and pumping. I think you get a special movie like RoboCop, but it has to be made by someone with a great point of view, I think.
Yeah, I think we could have done an entire episode on this movie on its own.
Exactly.
It's a dystopian movie. I thought it was interesting. We're talking about movies today, and sci-fi movies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
A lot of these sci-fi movies that are coming out now, I just see the poster or I see the DVD or the Blu-ray box, and I don't know anything about them. Like the sci-fi vision of this movie is kind of like a gender neutral vision, because you have the way Lewis, played by Nancy Allen, the way that she's introduced in the film, it could be a man, could be a woman, and she has short hair, and there's men and women changing in the movie, and they all wear the same bulletproof, chest plate, and then you see these dystopian movies or the sci-fi movies with the cover art, because I haven't seen Valerian in the City of a Thousand Planets or whatever it's called. No disrespect, I just haven't seen it. Or the Hunger Games, and like the women in these movies, they have these chest plates and they're highly sexualized. The way that they're done.
Right.
And this is just like kind of like it de-emphasizes all of that. And so that was an interesting take that is different from how you see dystopian movies today. Just in general, but that's probably just like the dressing of it, not really so much about the content of it. Right. But yeah, you were going to say something.
No, it's just interesting too that it's not sexualized, and there's no like romance between Murphy and Nancy Allen. But and it's funny coming from someone like Paul Verhoeven, who has a lot of sexual content in his movies. So it's interesting that he adapts himself for the movie, and he understands that that's not what the movie's about, and it becomes what it is about, and I think it's a very it makes a lot of bold choices and interesting choices, and that not a lot of filmmakers would make. Like a lesser filmmaker would have made like a love story angle between Murphy and his partner. Thankfully, they didn't go in that route. I'm not sure if they did in the sequels. I don't remember that either. But it would seem like a wrong way to go. It's more about a friendship and a partnership. All right, so that's RoboCop. And July 24th, La Bamba came out, and that was a big hit. And I like La Bamba. I just haven't seen it in a while. This movie came out. I talked about it before in the podcast. I really just want to get more of your point of view on it. I'm going to play a little clip from it. It's not the trailer, but it's a little scene from the movie. Here it is.
That's not a real person. It's a stunt man. Okay, now this right here isn't going to bother him because he's insane, okay?
Good Lord. What are you watching?
Do the dance for me, baby!
New film from the district. Safe use of power tools. Special delivery. I don't want to know what this is, do I?
No, probably not.
Oh, let me finish, ladies and gentlemen. What do you think of that, Anna Maria?
God, it was really American.
American, yes. It's an American masterpiece. It's talk about gutsy endings. The girl gets away, and our hero Leatherface, he chainsaws his own legs. 2 thumbs up.
Make that 4 for gore.
So I love Summer School, and it's a lot of fun, and I love this scene. I love that it's about a lot of kids who don't do well in school have to get together and like be forced to learn and to just to grow from it, and all the wackiness that can ensue from like. A bunch of misfits together with a teacher who wants to vacation, of course, and I love that there's the two characters who are really into horror movies and have the screening of Texas Chainsaw Massacre that we just listened to, and the reactions. It's so much fun. What are your thoughts on Summer School?
I like Summer School a lot, and a lot for the reasons that you just mentioned. Chainsaw and Dave, 2 of the most endearing characters in an 80s comedy for me, for sure, and especially one where they sort of outshine the rest of the movie. I do like the movie, but these two guys in the movie, I love them. And we mentioned Morgan Stewart's Coming Home a little earlier. Having these kind of horror movie nerds in them, it just kind of it really speaks to me.
It happens a lot in the summer, right? You have this movie, and Morgan Stewart, and then a movie that's coming up really soon too that we're going to talk about, like horror movie nerds in it, or horror nerds in it, which is kind of awesome.
Yes. And then seeing some of the casting in it, seeing some of these familiar faces that you see in a lot of these films, like Kelly Jo Mintner, who we see later in.
I love her in this movie. She's so funny in it. Yeah.
She's sort of barely in Lost Boys, but she's in it a little bit this summer too. It's a fun movie. Mark Harmon has this kind of easygoing charm. It's got some kind of heartwarming stuff, with the various kids' stories. But the main thing for me, the main appeal for me, is definitely Chainsaw Dave. Love it, and I kind of wanted to show a 30th anniversary screening of it this summer. Would have loved to have brought in the guy who plays Chainsaw, because he's actually from Norman, Oklahoma.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, Dean Cameron, who was also in a lot of other pictures like Rockula, Ski School, and it was just a lot of fun. Directed by Carl Reiner, who appears at the beginning of the film. Paramount Picture. A good deal of fun that's elevated by the presence of two very endearing characters.
Yeah, I just always love that it's a teen film, but it's also a romance between Mark Harmon and Kirstie Alley, and it doesn't get those, like, the elements that work in the movie just like kind of don't get in the way of each other. Like, they don't, because it's like a romance and a teen film and a zany comedy. They don't really because Carl Reiner is so good at juggling those things that they never really get in the way of each other. I think they all kind of like work well together. And I just really always dug it. I always liked all the kids in the movie, because I think they're like a misfit group, of course, with like a lot of different kinds of people. And that was a big thing in the 80s, having all these misfits together, especially in a room, like a movie like Moving Violations, or like a Police Academy, or in this case, Summer School, where they're in it together and they gotta like get through it and learn together and just try to like prove themselves worthy, I just love those kinds of movies, and I think Summer School is one of the better examples of those kinds of movies. It's so well done by everyone and performed by everyone, and it's just a lot of fun. The next one is fun. It's maybe not for everybody. Here is the WPIX TV premiere spot for it. Here we go.
The champion, the challenger, the super fight of the century. How can the Man of Steel stop the ultimate Terminator? Destroy Superman. Christopher Reeve, Gene Hackman, Margot Kidder, Mariel Hemingway, John Cryer, the newest adventure of America's greatest hero, Superman 4. Thursday night at 8 on Channel 11.
Superman 4. This is a Golan Globus production. This is a Canon film. And so when you're a kid and when you're a fan of Superman, you don't know the difference between Canon films and the Alexander and Ilya Salkind films, which preceded it. So you kind of expect something to be, like a production that's on the same level, and it is definitely not on the same level, to say the least. Canon, they produced a lot of wonderful movies, a lot of fun, trashy movies. For me, their best movie was probably Runaway Train with John Voight and Eric Roberts and Rebecca De Mornay. Loved that movie, and they just put out a lot of product. And at this point, they got the rights to Superman 4. This is a series that was kind of in decline. It went down quite a bit with Superman 3, and it goes down a bit more with Superman 4. But it still has its moments. Its story credit is with Christopher Reeve. I think he has either full story credit or partial, at least. You bring back Gene Hackman, you bring back Margot Kidder, Mariel Hemingway comes in. this movie, it very much has this kind of chintzy feel to it. Like there's a lot of fights that take place against like a brick wall or something like that. It does not have the scope of the previous films, and it does feel kind of lazy looking at it later on. Like there's some things on it that you're like, well, I don't understand why they did this. Like, you can see in the subway scene, there's posters for things that are like New York, that specifically say New York, and I thought this was Metropolis, and I don't know the comics well enough to know, but I don't know if Superman, if Metropolis takes place in New York State or not, but you do see a lot of New York stuff in this movie. You see like the set dressing in Clark Kent's apartment. He has a New York Giants pennant on his wall, and you can just kind of tell that this was a production that was sort of alien to the comics, like in America as well, like because the family that takes over the Daily Planet, Mariel Hemingway's father, and she takes over it as the new editor, and it says your favorite newspaper has a new editor or something like that. And favorite is spelled in the British way. so just kind of some lazy things and some kind of chintzy things and some decisions that don't really make sense, and kind of a dumb movie in terms of the story, but it does have its moments. It's fun. John Cryer is fun. He's clearly chewing up the scenery, and he's got some good lines and stuff. It's an enjoyable movie, but it does suffer from a considerable drop in budget. And the nuclear man, who's Superman's nemesis in this movie, is just pretty silly stuff. Have you seen this movie recently?
Oh yeah, I've seen it quite a few times over the years. They should have re-released. Now I'm thinking about it. They should have released Morgan Stewart's Coming Home Again in '87. Like, if you like John Cryer in Superman 4, you'll love him. See what audience would have thought of that. Actually, my favorite canon movie, and I'm thinking about it, is The Last American Virgin. And it's up there with Death Wish 3.
Oh gosh, those are both great movies.
But I do have a special place in my heart for all canon films, as bad as some of them can be. And I guess you would consider Superman 4 to be a bad movie. I mean, I'm fine with it being labeled that. I think it's an entertaining bad movie, though. I think its heart is in the right place. Like you mentioned, Christopher Reeve got a story by credit. And that was his reason for doing the movie. Like, he wanted to do the movie only if he can come up with a story for it. And they're like, okay, sure. And they did that, and then they decided to cut the budget at the last moment to a really small, ridiculous amount of money. And that's why it does feel chintzy. That's why it does feel cheap, and that's why there are probably a lot of shortcuts and a lot of mistakes made, because they did cut the budget so much and gutted it. It could have been a grander movie. I'm sure it could have been something a bit more special and something we would have looked back and say, okay, Superman 4, that was not quite as good as the first two, but it's pretty good, for a superhero movie. Now it's just considered a bad movie. I think those shortcuts that were taken by Golan Globus are they weren't doing well financially in 1987. By the end of the 80s, they were done. People forget that because they put a lot of money into a lot of movies, and not a lot of those movies made money, and that's what happens, right? You take chances. You're not sure what's gonna hit. If I were them, I would have kept the money in Superman 4 because you had a successful franchise up until that point. And maybe bank on the fact that Superman 4 could continue that box office if you keep its integrity and you keep its budget intact. So I think that was a mistake, of course, by them. But you enjoy it for what it is. At the same time, I do enjoy the continuation of the story of these characters, and it's always fun to have Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor. It's always fun to see Margot Kidder as Lois Lane, who I absolutely, loved in the first two films with Christopher Reeve. Their chemistry was always so great. And then, the additions of other characters are fine, and then I think too special, but I think it works well for what it is, much lower budgeted superhero movie, and I've always had an affinity for the Superman films in general because I'm not a big comic book guy. I'm not a big superhero movie guy, but I've always loved Christopher Reeve in that role, and for me, he's the heart of the movie, and I just will always go back to them and just be happy to know that we had this, and had this in my generation, in my life, the Superman movies, and even though 3 and 4 are not good films, but I enjoyed them for what they were. And I saw Superman 4 at the Walker Theater. I'm trying to think of what I saw it with that day. Trying to remember. I'm not sure what I saw it with, but I probably rewatched something else that I saw a lot. That's probably what I did. Going back now, looking at the list, I think I saw it with Revenge of the Nerds too. Again, I watched that a couple times. La Bamba I saw in theaters. Not sure if that was the Walker, but I had fun watching it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's fine, and I wouldn't mind owning it on Blu-ray. I don't think I only have the first movie on Blu-ray. The first two. I bought the Warner Brothers. Warner Archives put out the TV cut.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Of Superman 1. I bought that. And that was really cool to see because I hadn't seen those scenes since it played on TV. It used to play on WPIX in New York, like practically, it felt like every week. It wasn't every week, but when growing up, it played a lot on TV. But I hadn't seen those scenes in a really long time, so it was kind of cool seeing them again in the movie. Not all of the scenes work, of course, but it was really cool seeing them. And I definitely would buy Superman 4 on Blu-ray. Call me crazy, but I would.
It was a fun movie, and it did have its charm, But those things they kind of have to be acknowledged.
Yeah, exactly.
I work in a library, and back in the early 2000s, I was the area of the library that I was in was the media center of the Central Library, and that's similar to your experience working in the video store. And one of my favorite memories of that was, on the other side of the glass there was a window there, and on the other side there was a little wall that had had the movie posters for whatever big movie was coming out on video, and there was a poster for Superman Returns there, and I could just overhear this conversation of this little boy and his dad, and they're in that area, and the little boy looks up at the poster and he goes, "Superman," and the dad says, "That's not Superman. Christopher Reeve is Superman. That is not Superman." And I just always loved that. I always loved that memory, and I hope that kid has grown up. He's probably 18 now, or however old, and I hope that he knows that Christopher Reeve is Superman.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully, he watches Superman 4: The Quest for Peace a lot, as you should, people. All right, so July 24th also had "Wish You Were Here," which I saw in the theaters at the Lincoln Plaza Theater. I had to go into the city to see all the arty movies, and that's what I did. And I like that one. On July 31st, the end of July, we had a couple of big movies. A couple of small ones, too. The two small ones were A Man in Love and The Wolf at the Door. The two bigger movies were a James Bond movie, The Living Daylights, which I haven't seen in a long, long time. I don't remember it, really. So I'm not going to go into it. And this movie, a movie that I do know very well, and I think you do too. Here's the TV spot.
Michael and Sam are about to discover a secret in California.
Santa Carla's crawling with vampires.
Stay back! Stay back! I'm your brother, Sammy. Help me!
What's happening, Mini Star?
My own brother, a blood-sucking vampire.
You better get yourself a garlic t-shirt, buddy.
Oh, you wait till Mom finds out.
Has everyone gone crazy here?
The Lost Boys. Rated R. Sneak preview Friday, July 17th.
Okay, The Lost Boys, 1987 summer. This was a very hot movie. You know, this is something that we hadn't seen before because it's a big budget, it's a slick film that's a horror film. Well, you know, it's got horror elements to it, horror comedy, and it's got a great young cast. It's got Kiefer Sutherland and Jason Patric and the Coreys, Edward Herrmann, who you know, was kind of a cinematic father figure to me. You know, like you watch these movies and you sort of I sort of adopted him as sort of a father figure, like in this movie and also in that movie. What was that movie with Peter Billingsley? Death Valley.
Death Valley. Yes,
Yeah. I don't know why, but you know, and Diane Wiest and Jamie Gertz. You know, it's a very well loved movie. Directed by Joel Schumacher, produced by Richard Donner, and I think that, you know, part of its appeal is that you hadn't really seen like this big budget kind of slick movie, MTV type horror movie, but also the soundtrack. It's wonderful, you know, with Jimmy Barnes, In Excess, you know, the People Are Strange by the cover by Echo and the Bunnymen.
Love it.
Yeah, the Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me by Roger Daltrey. Oh, this is one of the best soundtracks of the 80s, in my opinion. A lot of fun movie in this movie, and we're talking about kind of like horror nerds. It's got comic book nerds in this one, with Corey Feldman and his brother, the Frog Brothers. They run a comic book store, and they teach Corey Haim about you know, vampires in Santa Carla. Yeah,
the made up Santa Carla.
The made up Santa Carla.
I think it's supposed to be Santa Cruz though.
Santa Cruz. Yeah, it's a fun one, and it was one of those ones where at the time, wow, this one was just kind of a buzzed about and talked about and loved movie. And for me, it hasn't held that esteem, but I have watched it a few times, and I really like the movie a lot. Not one of my favorite movies not one of my top favorites, but it is a lot of fun. But I think probably my favorite thing about the movie is the soundtrack. Yeah, I really enjoy the movie. But it's not quite up there, you know, with some of the other films. But you know, I have been watching it here recently, and I do enjoy the movie quite a bit. You know, I'm a big Kiefer Sutherland fan, and he's used to great effect in this movie. Great special effects in this movie too. Yeah, I'm guessing you probably like this movie a little bit more than I do.
Oh yeah, I love The Lost Boys. I mean, I think it represented everything that was so great about 1987. It was very slick. It was very well made. It was well acted. It was just, you know, pretty people, but it was also like fun and scary and just it's so entertaining. And you had great actors in there. You had Diane Wiest in a horror movie. I mean, what more do you want? I mean, you love Diane Wiest. I love horror movies. Put them together. There you go. And the Coreys. I mean, the power of the Coreys. This is where it started. It started with Lost Boys, and you know, I love teen movies in the 80s. I love teen movies still in the 80s, and you get that combine that with horror and a well-made shot movie, and with fun special effects and characters. Like, it's like, to me, it's the perfect movie in a way. I know it's not for everybody. I think some people get turned off by some of its slickness, but I have the opposite reaction to it. I want to watch it right now because of those things, and I watched it 3 or 4 times in theaters that summer. Because it just again, yeah, it did everything I wanted it to do, and it took me by surprise that I liked it so much. I knew I was gonna enjoy some of it. I mean, it seemed like it would be cool. I wasn't a big vampire movie guy up until that point, but I just really, really dug it. And Joel Schumacher generally makes movies like that especially of that time period. He made St. Elmo's Fire, which is another well-made, slick movie about pretty people, and I just like what he does with those kinds of movies, and I like, the point of view, because it's not something that's always well executed by other people, but I think it's really well executed here. And The Lost Boys stays with a lot of people. It has a lot of fans. It was a hit at the box office, so it has a big fan base, and I think with good reason. I think it just hits all the right spots for people. And you have Jason Patrick and essentially a story of brothers up against something that's bigger than them and tempting them to do some pretty bad things. And Jamie Gertz is the love interest, who I like her and a lot of stuff at the time. And like I said, Diane Wiest and all the actors. I mean, it's just a hard movie to distill all the elements. Just talk about those things, and then I'd just much rather watch the movie and just enjoy it, because that's what it to me is, pure enjoyment, pure cinema. I mentioned a story, I believe, on the podcast where I went to see The Lost Boys for the second or third time. I can't remember when it was. And the theater was empty, so I saw it during the day, kind of off, during the week when the theater was usually empty. It was an R-rated movie, and I wasn't supposed to be in there, of course, because I was 12. But that was one of the very few times I ever got busted at being in an R-rated movie. An usher came over to me and started talking to me oh, you're in this movie, huh? And then he just started talking to me about stuff, and I'm trying to watch a movie, and I was kind of both scared that I was going to be caught and thrown out, but at the same time I was also annoyed that this usher was talking to me while I'm not trying to enjoy the movie. Hello, I'm trying to watch The Lost Boys here. What are you doing? And he just kept going on and on. And he was just saying, I can't remember the exact conversation now because it's 30 years later, but it was very strange and odd. And I just remember feeling really uncomfortable. And then the first time he appeared from behind me, just being in a horror movie in an empty theater, and then someone coming from behind you and then talking your ear off, is a very strange situation. And then he flashed his nails at me, and the nails were very long and pointy. And of course, I'm freaked out because I'm watching a movie about vampires, and this guy has long, pointy nails in a dark theater. I'm like, oh my god, this guy works in a movie theater because he's a vampire. It's dark. I'm really scared. So it really heightened the experience of watching The Lost Boys with that. And that's that particular screening of it. And it always stuck with me, of course. And I think of that once in a while when I watch the movie, and just think of all the times that I watched it and enjoy it. I don't know, I just always loved it, and I just lucky, I guess, to feel that I was of that age and going to see these kinds of movies in the theater. And come on, they made R-rated horror movies for teenagers then. I mean, this wasn't for adults. I mean, this was a movie about teenagers, for teenagers. So how lucky were we then? It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, all the movies were a little harder than they would be now.
Yeah, now it would be just they wouldn't make a movie like this for kids anymore. They would just be for adults and whatever. But anyway, we were lucky.
Yeah.
All right, that was the end of July. So moving into August, Here's the trailer. No, I'm not going to play the trailer for this because this is a movie I discussed on the podcast before, Stakeout, which I'm a fan of. I have talked about it on the Touchstone podcast. I love a good buddy action comedy, and this is a good one to me. Richard Dreyfuss and Emilio Estevez playing really well off of each other, and a fun, trying to solve a crime by staking out a possible a witness or person who knows the criminal, and then of course a love story that happens between Dreyfuss and Madeline Stowe, who I immediately fell in love with while watching this movie. Have you seen Stakeout? Do you remember it?
I have seen it. It's been a long time. I remember it was kind of a sleeper hit at the time. Kind of had legs.
Yes.
Directed by John Badham, I believe.
Yes.
And it was a lot of fun. A lot of good banter between Emilio Estevez and Richard Dreyfuss, and a really good set piece at the end, or good action set piece at the end. I believe it takes place in like a logging mill. It's been so long, I don't really remember. But it was a lot of fun, and it was one that I looked at and I was like, oh, I should probably revisit this movie. But there's only so many you can get to. But I definitely want to see it again.
Yeah, I don't think it was released on Blu-ray. The first one, the second one's on Blu-ray, strangely. But the first one was never given a Blu-ray release, which is weird, especially since it was a big hit in theaters. Like I said, it had legs. A lot of movies, again, they stuck around for a long time. It's played well through the fall, and I think maybe even to the winter. So it's made a bunch of money and did really well. I think it's because it is, like I said, a crowd pleaser. It has action, it has comedy, it has romance, it has a lot of those things, and again, I'm a big fan of those kinds of movies, especially when they pull off all those things and do it well. And I just really, again, love the chemistry between the three leads. Really, really good. And Aidan Quinn was pretty good as a bad guy. I like him. All right, August 7th, I had Back to the Beach. I haven't seen that in a while, but I remember that being fun. The Care Bears Movie 3, Adventures in Wonderland, which I saw in the theater. No, not that. I know I saw Care Bears 2 in the theater. Sorry, I didn't see Care Bears 3 in the theater. The Girl, Happy New Year, Masters of the Universe, which I saw in the theater. That played at the Walker. Nadine, I saw that in the theater. And here's a teaser for a movie that came out on August 7th that I saw in the theater.
Who is that girl?
Who are you?
She's beautiful. She's impulsive. She's Madonna. And in 24 hours, she'll turn a mild-mannered corporate attorney into a wild-eyed fugitive from justice. All because she holds the key to a life he never expected. Madonna. Griffin Dunn.
Kiss me. I got the moves, baby. You got the motion.
Who's that girl?
Causing a commotion. I got the moves, baby. You got the motion. If we got together, we'd be causing a commotion.
Okay, that's Who's That Girl, which I saw in the theater. I saw this along with, I took in a double feature of this and Masters of the Universe, two very different movies. But I had a fun while watching them, of course. I know it doesn't have the best reputation, maybe. Who's That Girl? I'm not exactly sure what people think of it, but I don't know why, because it's a lot of fun to me. It's zany and silly. It's like Griffin Dunn After Hours doing that kind of again in a way, but like a kind of a trek across New York with New York City with Madonna, just being crazy and just leading him on all these misadventures. It's a reworking of Breaking a Baby, of course, but I don't know. I always found it a lot of fun. I watch it from time to time because it's one of those movies that I kind of watch and just like and just enjoy and not have to like think about anything. But I always really enjoyed it. I like Madonna. I mean, I love her music, of course, but her acting is something that not always doesn't always gel with people, and I can understand that in certain roles. But I think she's fun here in this role. I think she kind of nails it and has a character that I kind of like, and I always like that zany screwball comedy person like Katharine Hepburn or any of those actresses from the 30s who pulled off a lot of those zany roles, and I think she does that pretty well in a very 80s way. It's a very 87 movie. It feels very 80s, a lot of pastels and lots of that time period used really well.
I don't know that.
Alexa's going off. Alexa, I didn't ask you anything. Go away. Alexa, play Who's That Girl? No, just kidding. She might actually play it.
By Madonna.
I don't think I'm gonna play it. Alexa, stop. Alexa, stop. Oh my god. That's gonna wake up everybody. Oh my god. I can't believe that just happened. Thank you for playing that though, Alexa, because I like that song. I like the soundtrack a lot.
You can only set thumbs up or down for a song playing on your custom stations.
I got Alexa as a present, and now I wanted to give her back. She's crazy. I like causing a commotion a lot. There's a lot of good songs in that movie. All right. August 14th, Disorderlies, played at the Walker, Living on Tokyo Time, North Shore, saw that in the theater as well, and a TV spot for a movie that I saw a few times that summer as well. Here it is.
From Touchstone Pictures.
I want to rent you. Rent me?
Dating the town's most fantastic girl made Ronald Miller popular.
Totally chic.
But breaking up with her made him a star.
Legendary status.
He's cute, sweet.
Ladies!
Until he realized it's not who you're with, it's who you are.
All I ever wanted to do was get close to you.
He's such a heartbreaker.
Can't Buy Me Love. Rated PG-13.
One show sneak preview tomorrow night. Check newspaper for time.
To me, one of the ultimate 80s teen comedies is Can't Buy Me Love. I've talked about this one on the Touchstone podcast, along with Stakeout and Adventures in Babysitting, so I won't go too deep into it. But Can't Buy Me Love is a movie that I watched over the New Year's holiday because it is set over New Year's towards the end of the movie. So it's a perfect New Year's movie to me. Patrick Dempsey playing the nerd who wants to be popular, buys into his popularity. We all know the story. And then kind of misuses it, as you do when you're not used to being a popular person. I don't know, it just has all the elements of a teen comedy that I like. It has the character who wants to be someone who's not. It has a lot of wackiness. It has a dance scene that's very memorable, and it has very charming actors who, you like and you want to see. You're rooting for. You're rooting for him and the popular girl to get together and fall in love, and it delivers on all those things that I like about teen comedies. And of course, you have a very charismatic lead with Patrick Dempsey and Amanda Peterson, who sadly passed away the last couple of years, and tragically. You just love these characters, and you love the setting. I liked all these very 80s teen comedies that were coming out of like places like Arizona and Tucson, because they had a very specific look about them, like Just One of the Guys. Mm-hmm. That maybe like wanted to live in the West Coast because they were very of that time, very of that setting, and I just always really liked this movie. I just always liked. I always wanted to be not popular, but someone who was a little bit more. Kind of of a certain group, but then you realize that you need to be an individual. That's what makes you special, and it's one of those movies that kind of taught me a lot of important lessons about being a teenager, and I tried to be my own self. be my own individual self in high school, and I think I pulled that off pretty well. But I was thankful to get some good lessons from Can't Buy Me Love and movies like that. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think this is an interesting movie. I think one of the things about it, it could have gone a number of ways in kind of executing its concept. And what they do, to me anyway, with Patrick Dempsey's character is they make him very unlikable in spots. He's well-meaning, but he kind of gets caught up in these things, like the part when they prank his best friend's house.
Oh yeah, let's play the clip right here.
You shit on my house, man. No. You shit on my house!
I love the way he delivers that line. Go on.
Yeah, Courtney Gaines. So, for a good chunk of this movie, he's pretty unlikable. So, it's like in a different hand or a different way, they could have minimized that a little bit more. But it's interesting that they did that with him, and they had this terrible event that happens to his friend, so at the end, he really does need to make amends. He really does need to apologize, and we've all done things that we're ashamed of, and things that we need to be sorry for, and certainly we can relate to him at the end of this movie. So he doesn't become so unlikable that he's not irredeemable. And I think that a nice contrast to that is in the character of the popular girl. Amanda Peterson, her character, she's pretty grounded. She's pretty, she's got a good head on her shoulders, and it doesn't seem like it's gonna go that way at the very beginning. But quickly she's definitely the smart one in this film. She sees what's going on, and nobody else really does.
Right.
So yeah, I do like this movie. Patrick Dempsey kind of played more characters like this character later on with like the lover boy, the pizza delivery guy.
I love that.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. So yeah, it is a fun movie, and it does have like sort of just enough touches to where he's a likable character. Like he takes her out on that sort of quasi first date where they go out into the junkyard with the cars, and he has this. He's kind of a nerd. He wants to buy this telescope with his $1,000, but sort of immediately he gets it into his head that he's going to rent Amanda Peterson, and then he sort of at the end it's all his idea, and then he resents her for being rented. So it's kind of it's definitely a difficult character to like at times. But I appreciated that, but he definly needed to make amends and apologize at the end of this film because he is kind of a shit in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely has. He goes to the dark side of popularity because, like I mentioned earlier, he couldn't handle it because it's not something that was ingrained in him, and he tried to be popular too fast, and then it just backfires on him greatly. And I think the New Year's Eve scene really does resonate. I mean, there's a lot of moments in this movie that are very like emotional and interesting and real, and I like that about a teen film. I think the key for making it work with his characters is Patrick Dempsey. Like, if you didn't have a character if you have an actor in that role that wasn't as likable, then it wouldn't have worked at all, because like you said, he does go to those really dark places and he's not likable in terms of a character. But then you have a likable actor playing an unlikable person, that definitely lessens the blow, and maybe possibly we're rooting for them to change towards the end. And this movie is about change and about accepting who you are at the same time. So I just really dig that about it. I just like that it has all those layers. I like that he mentioned Amanda Peterson's character, who does reveal herself a bit more as the movie goes on. Like, she has layers to her. She's constantly peeling off those layers. She's not the typical girl in the teen movie that that you pine over, and that's about it. She's someone who's smart and has a good head on her shoulders, like you mentioned, and has aspirations and does get caught up in her popularity, but then also has the secret side to herself. And I like that about the movie, and I like that it does that and doesn't shy away from those things and doesn't just make her one-dimensional. It makes her multi-dimensional. It's a great role, and I think it's interesting that a teen movie at the time can be like that and not just be just one thing. Yeah, and I like that. Love it. Okay, and then our next movie, another big summer '87 movie for us. Here's a TV spot.
Once upon a time, it was one monster per movie. Those were the good old days.
We're the Monster Squad. Awesome. Only one way to kill a werewolf. Wolfman Squad. I don't believe this.
The Monster Squad, rated PG-13. Starts Friday, August 14th at a theater near you.
Okay, we've talked about a few things earlier in the podcast that kind of tie into this film, The Monster Squad. This movie is directed by Fred Dekker and written by Fred Dekker and Shane Black, who appeared in Predator earlier in the podcast. It's got that great dialogue, and it also has Tom Noonan, who we mentioned earlier. This movie is about a group of kids who are horror movie nerds, monster movie nerds, who have a clubhouse, and they form a monster squad, and there actually are monsters in their town. There's the Frankenstein monster, there's the Dracula, the Gill Man. They don't have the original Universal property names, and the Mummy, and so they kind of team up and fight against these monsters. Although the Frankenstein's monster is he's a nice monster in this movie, misunderstood, like he is in most of the ways that he appears in the previous movies too, in Universal movies. It's a lot of fun. It's got that 80s soundtrack. It's just a really appealing movie for a kid. It embraces its PG-13ness as well. Like, that's kind of a theme with a lot of these movies. And it's just so much fun. It's one that I kind of have grown to love more and more as I get older, and it's I think that its popularity has kind of increased over time. It's one of those movies that hasn't been forgotten. Some of these movies we've talked about have kind of they were big hits maybe back then and aren't really discussed as much as anymore. But The Monster Squad is a very well loved and revered movie. Just so much fun. That Fred Dekker dialogue, or that Fred Dekker and Shane Black dialogue, it's clever. It's just coming out of the mouths of these kids. It's just a very winning combination. I love the kids and all their different personalities, and the lead kid and his sister, who they kind of begrudgingly let into the club. And of course, it's got some famous lines, particularly the Wolfman's got nards line, and just so much to love about this movie. What do you think?
I mean, totally agreed. I mean, this was a movie that wasn't a hit. It wasn't didn't do very well at the box office for some crazy reason. I don't know why. I think it was probably just not marketed correctly. I mean, it's a teen movie, but it's also a horror movie. So I don't know. Maybe I think horror fans got confused and teen films got confused to what it was. But I think it's a movie for everyone, really. For anyone who likes horror, or everyone who likes teen movies, everyone who likes just fun movies. It just really hits all those spots for me. I mean, how lucky were we, again, to get these kinds of movies growing up? I mean, to get these movies about kids dealing with dealing with horror situations. You got The Gate, you got and you got Lost Boys and The Monster Squad in the same summer. Like, how insane is that to me? It's really cool, and we were lucky to have all those fun movies, and we're lucky to have these movies 30 years later that we can revisit, enjoy, and like you said, The Monster Squad has definitely got a better reputation over time, and more people love it. There's lots of screenings of it in LA. People go see it. They go see it with some of the stars in the movie. I think this movie's just more discussed. It's more in their zeitgeist now than it has ever been. It's been released on Blu-ray a couple of times, and it's just a big ball of fun. I saw it in the theater, the Walker Theater. I saw it along with Disorderlies and one other movie. I'm trying to remember what it was now. And you know, it just of the three that I saw, I remember The Monster Squad sticking out the most to me, and just enjoying it on many levels. That it was a fun movie, but it was also a well-made movie. Fred Decker's a good director and someone who, you know, his career was sadly cut short by making a not so successful RoboCop movie, as we tying back into RoboCop. And yeah, he's admitted to making some mistakes with that, and just but you know, I'm glad he's back on the bandwagon and making another movie with Shane Black. I think that's going to work out pretty well for them, and I just wish you know, that we had more Fred Decker movies, because the two that he made in the 80s especially are very special movies, Night of the Creeps and this one, and they just really delivered on what they set out to do, and make fun movies that are send-ups of things that he loved, like 50s science fiction and movies, and monster movies, like the Universal monster movies. These are great takes on genres, horror genres of past, and science fiction genres of past. And I don't know if there's any modern equivalent of this kind of stuff, with maybe like Stranger Things and stuff like that might be closer to what he was trying to do back then, but I think that's a homage. Whereas he was doing it when no one else was doing it at the time, and just making purely fun movies and sit with kids and teenagers, which I really appreciated. And I wanted to be a member of the Monster Squad. We were successful enough, I'm sure there would have been sequels and fan clubs that you could join to be part of the Monster Squad. 1-900 numbers you could call the Monster Squad, or like do trivia. I remember a lot of movies back then had 1-900 numbers. I don't think the Monster Squad was one of them, though. I remember very well when it came out on VHS. Again, like The Gate, being very excited to rent it. To be the first person to rent the brand new video cassette copy of The Monster Squad on Vestron VHS. And I was one of those people who got to watch it right away when it came out. And watched it several times, of course. Back then, when you rented a movie for the day, I watched it a few times in a day and then returned it. I just had a lot of fun with it, and I still do. And I watched the Blu-ray now with the commentary and the behind the scenes, and it's really good special features, and that and Night of the Creeps especially. I think Fred Decker is fun to listen to, and he has a lot of stories. And again, yeah, another filmmaker that should be making more movies. But hey, what can you do? Moving on, here's a trailer for a movie that I saw back in '87.
They needed a hero.
I understand he has a background in intelligence. He has 2 tours with naval intelligence. Get him here.
He liked excitement.
Take us somewhere.
He wanted her. Their passion upset the balance of power.
What's all this top secret business I've been hearing about over the Pentagon?
You know I work for Bryce?
Then that makes 2 of us.
This one can do things for me like no other woman I've ever met.
Behind the cover-up.
Try and understand.
The power.
The important thing is to abort an investigation before it ever gets to you.
You haven't told me everything.
Who's running this thing at the Pentagon?
The new boy, Farrell.
So we can take the fall in case anything goes wrong.
The loyalty.
I love you. I promise I'll work everything out.
How did you actually meet the Secretary of Defense?
I need a car. It's an emergency.
These people have already tried to kill one person who knew.
Bring this one down. No, you can't take that.
Behind the deceit.
If it were your intention to bring down David Bryce, then I'd have no choice but to make sure that you didn't get away with it.
They mean to kill me, Sam.
Because of the truth, there's no way out. Kevin Costner, Gene Hackman, Sean Young, Will Patton, No Way Out.
Okay, that's No Way Out, the second movie with Kevin Costner from the summer of '87, and I was very surprised by this movie because a grown-up movie with that guy from The Untouchables again. Wait, what is he doing in another movie this summer? Wasn't sure what to expect from it. I knew Gene Hackman was in it, and it was really really on the edge of your seat thriller type of movie. I still find it to be very suspenseful. I find myself when I watch this, every time I watch this movie, I really get into the story. I really like the actors. I really like Kevin Costner and Sean Young and Gene Hackman, and I just really find myself really intrigued by it and also surprised by the ending of the movie. It always takes me by surprise every single time I watch it, and even though I know some of the twists and turns it takes. So it's just a really well done movie. I think Roger Donaldson directed it. Pretty good director. And just a really well made movie. I know it got some critical acclaim when it came out. I feel like people like Roger Ebert were championing it. But it was kind of like a little bit, it was definitely a sleeper of that August. I don't know if it was true. I guess true that by this point in August, there were movies being released. There were now to us seemed that there were bigger movies, but they were movies that studios didn't really have a lot of faith in, although they would have positioned them in better spots. But this is at the end of August, and they're releasing this little movie, No Way Out, not knowing what it would do, but it ended up being a hit, and it stuck around for a while. I think based on those reviews and based on word of mouth, people are like, oh, you got to see No Way Out and find out what happens. It's a very thrilling movie, and I do like it a lot. I have it on Blu-ray now. Have you seen it?
I have seen it. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I do remember that this movie kind of captured the adult audience interest for quite a while, and it had legs as well. And I liked the movie quite a bit. I do need to revisit it. I do remember Will Patton being very good in the movie, as I believe he's Hackman's kind of underling. Just another movie that is a solid effort from Costner. Like whenever we think about Costner, or at least whenever I think about him now, I kind of think about like Bull Durham being like his sort of star-making, charismatic role. But he's doing some very solid work in No Way Out and in The Untouchables in the summer of '87.
Yeah, this is it. This is the summer that really made him, I think. I forgot Will Patton in the movie. I've actually met Will Patton.
Oh wow, what's he like?
Again at Kim's video, and very, very strange. I had a very strange experience with him. We were talking for a while, and the conversation was very odd. He has a very unique way of talking and cadence, and I don't know, something about it was kind of very odd to me. He was talking about a movie he did called The Paint Job, and which I ended up watching and enjoying and liking, but yeah, I could definitely see it being like the quirkiness of his characters in movies. Like, yeah, that's definitely him, but he's really very quirky. And anytime I bump into like actors or talk to actors who are quirky, it was I don't know. Sometimes throws me off because you're actually like that. You're actually kind of weird like that. Like he was kind of weird and Desperately Seeking Susan, like very weird, and he was like, oh yeah, you're actually kind of weird like that. That's who you are. There are more actors like that. There was an actor that surprised me who was very strange and creepy. I mean, I'll talk about that actor when we get to one of his movies. Not in this podcast because he didn't have a movie that summer, but he'll have one soon, I think, on a podcast. Anyway, let's move on. That was August 20. That was like August 14th. August 21st, Born in East LA came out. The Garbage Pail Kids, which unfortunately I saw in the theater. The Walker, Inside Out, and The Stranger Within came out, and these two movies. Here is the trailer for the first one.
I never did have much luck with sex anyway.
Well, your luck's about to change.
A man and a woman caught between deceit and desire. The Big Easy.
I mean, how far does all this stuff go, huh? What, is everything for sale? What's it cost to beat a murder rap these days?
The questions, the answers.
I learned a lot from that little interview.
Oh, really? You read minds?
No, I read people.
The truth, the lies.
What, you got some kind of police corruption angle on this case?
No comment, Lieutenant.
You got any evidence at all?
Internal affairs, hold it!
The secrets, the scandals.
That in addition to the crime charged, the defendant has perjured himself.
Objection!
The mystery, the murder.
You see, the police are putting out this story that there's a gang war going on. Do you believe that?
The Big Easy.
Why'd you withhold this information from the police, huh?
The police are the suspects.
Must be more than $5 million worth.
Too easy to deny. Too big to stop. The Big Easy.
Now, I haven't seen this movie in a while, but I remember really liking it when I saw it. I saw it in the Embassy One Theater in Times Square. And it was kind of an interesting experience because not far from where I was sitting, somebody was getting a hand job. And that's something you would expect to happen in a Times Square theater, but it didn't really happen a lot when I was in movies. But that happened at that time. And maybe because the title was The Big Easy, they thought it was okay to do that there in that particular screening. Anyway, that's what I remember about The Big Easy. There is definitely some sexiness in the movie, like Ellen Barkin, who's scorching hot in movies, of course, and generally. She has great chemistry with Dennis Quaid, and they have a good rapport together. I just like the movie. I didn't really dig it as much as I would when I watched it later on video. When I saw more of like Jim McBride's movies, like I don't think at that point I hadn't seen Breathless yet, the remake, which I love and one of my favorite movies, and Great Balls of Fire. I think Great Balls of Fire came out and I started revisiting his movies, and that's when I learned about Breathless, and that's when I revisited Big Easy, and I ended up liking it a lot, and I think a good solid thriller. And interesting characterizations with Dennis Quaid playing a character who's possibly guilty of being a cop on the take, which a lot of cops were at the time, and The Big Easy, and working for a police station that's kind of corrupt, and Ellen Barkin kind of trying to clean up things. And of course solve crimes and all that stuff that happens in the movie that I won't go into because you can watch the movie and enjoy it for that. But I always liked it, especially the chemistry again between the leads. Second Dennis Quaid movie of the summer. It's funny how these actors had multiple movies and pulled them off pretty well. He had an accent in that one, a Cajun accent. Sometimes Cajun accents are questionable to me in movies. I don't know when actors aren't specifically from that part of the world, part of the country. They don't quite pull it off, but I liked him enough in the role, and I thought he was good. Have you seen The Big Easy?
I have not. That's one of my friend Brandon's top 10 movies from 1987, because I quizzed him before we did this podcast, and it's definitely one that's on my list of shame. I need to watch that one.
Yeah, I think another movie that was championed by, I want to say, Roger Ebert or someone like that, because it was like kind of like a smallish movie. Like it wasn't getting a lot of love from like distributors. So like it was one of the movies like where critics' word of mouth had to really help it sell, and I think that's what happened with that one. I know, again, released at the end of August, so they weren't expecting much. They also weren't expecting much about this movie. So released at the end of August. And then I think it surprised a lot of people. Here's a TV spot for it.
Every summer, there's a movie that breaks away from it all. This summer, that movie is Dirty Dancing. A terrific film dances rings around Footloose, Flashdance, even Saturday Night Fever. Joel Siegel. Flashdance with Heart, the Boston Globe. This is Saturday Night Fever with even more of a sensual connection, the LA Times. Dirty Dancing is Flashdance with a triple-digit IQ, Toronto Globe and Mail. Dirty Dancing, starring Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey, rated PG-13, now playing at a theater near you. Original soundtrack available on RCA Records and Cassettes.
For Grey, Patrick Swayze. It's a movie about class relations, but it's also got all that great Phil Spector type music. Jennifer Grey's family goes to the Catskills for 2 weeks. Her dad takes her there, and it's like a vacation spot. She's Baby. She's the innocent character who everybody just kind of don't really notice her very much. And I think that Jennifer Grey really captures the shyness of the character. And it's a different role for Patrick Swayze. He's a dance instructor, so he's not playing a tough guy or anything like that you remember him in other films, that he did later, like Point Break or something like that. And he's a wonderful dancer.
He's like
I love
the
this
wind.
movie. Yeah, he's like the wind through my tree.
Like the wind,
Yeah, I love this movie. It's another one of those sleeper hits. But I think that this movie at the end of August, it just really kind of captured that post Labor Day, business, and just really had legs and just played for months and months and months. Just such a good movie. It's got a good supporting cast. But the main thing for me is probably that chemistry between the sweet, naive, shy girl Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze's character, who's the dance instructor, and they fall in love through him teaching her how to dance and take the part of his other dance partner who's unable to fulfill her duties as his dance partner. It's just a terrific movie, and I think this is like probably one of the biggest crowd pleasers of the bunch of this summer. I'd have to say it's you stack it up against any of the other movies, it's as much of a crowd pleaser as any of them. I'm sure you've talked about it, and I'm sure you love it. But I'd love to hear what you have to say about it.
Yeah, the very first podcast we talked about dance movies, and Dirty Dancing was one of them. And I'm not ashamed to admit that I do love Dirty Dancing. And it seems like I don't know why you would be ashamed to admit that, because it's a fun movie. It's a dance movie, yes, and there's really good dancing in it, but it's a good story about characters who kind of like have to grow and learn from each other and come of age, good coming of age story, and that's something I can always really dig. Patrick Swayze, you can't go wrong with Patrick Swayze. You can't go wrong with Jennifer Grey. Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey together, their second movie together after Red Dawn. They should have just kept going, made like different movies in different genres together, right? Maybe like a science fiction movie after this one. I could see that happening. Or maybe like a superhero movie where Swayze is the Superman to her Lois Lane. I don't know.
Maybe she's the superheroine.
That's even better, I think.
Yeah.
It's interesting that this movie was such a big hit, but it like a slow burn because it didn't like catch on in the way that it was like okay, it came out, and then people were like, oh, what's that movie with the dancing, and then it just kept going and going and going. People kept going, and I think it was one of those movies people kept going multiple times. It never hit number 1 at the box office, but yeah, it was a big hit, which is really cool when that happens. I like when movies are just keep going for months, and it did really well, of course, on VHS. It was one of those movies where they released the VHS at a lower price to get more people to buy it, which wasn't really happening that much. Only certain movies were doing that, like certain big movies were doing that. And so you could buy Dirty Dancing fairly close to when it came out on for rental to own in your collection. And I'm sure we bought that tape, or I bought that tape at some point, and just enjoyed the heck out of it, and I still enjoy it to this day. I think it's a well-made coming-of-age movie. When I looked up years ago the locations for it, I know it's set in the Catskills, so I assumed it was the Catskills, but it was actually filmed, I want to say like North Carolina or somewhere in the South. It was actually filmed. I was kind of surprised by that, because it seemed like the Catskills to me, and I've been to the Catskills, and it seems like that to me. So it's kind of surprising it was actually not there, filmed there. But they probably did that for financial reasons, because filming in the Catskills isn't really impractical, because there's not a lot of production stuff up there. You have to go into the city, of course. You get the production stuff for New York. So that's kind of cool that the movies had such a life after 30 years, really. And they've had sequels and remakes and stuff, but I don't think they worked out, because it's like once you hit a movie, like have a movie that becomes so ingrained in the zeitgeist, and people will always just remember that original film, and I don't think anything can come near it, in terms of when you try to recreate the magic. A lot of it has to do with the actors and their chemistry and stuff. So especially in that kind of movie too. When it's about dancing, a lot of what works about dancing is the chemistry, especially dancing with two people, is the chemistry between the actors as dancers and the actors as possible romantic items. And I think that movie just really pulls off a lot of those things so well. So I'm a big fan of Dirty Dancing. All right, so that was August 21st. We're in the summer, guys. August 28th had Backlash, End of the Line, The Fourth Protocol, which I saw that in the theater from Marlboro Theater. Hamburger Hill, that was an action war movie that I didn't see in theaters. The Rosary Murders, which I saw in the theater, the Walker Theater. And Matewan, the John Sayles movie, came out at the end of August. And then there was one more, which I saw at the Walker Theater, and this is the last movie of the day, and here is the trailer for it.
Once upon a time, in a land called Beverly Hills, there lived a spoiled princess.
It's the Beaujolais Nouveau.
Who had it all.
What? Don't worry, I have a case.
Her carriage was a cherry red Mercedes. Every night she had a ball. Every day her daddy paid.
Dad, please, I'm zeroed out.
I gave you 200.
Well, it's ancient history.
I believe it was lunchtime.
And then one day, fate stepped in.
You're making a big mistake. See, I'm rich.
And something extraordinary happened.
Who are you?
I'm your fairy godmother.
As of 5 minutes ago, the old Jesse Montgomery ceased to exist. All right, look, it's a great joke. It's really funny. I've learned my lesson. Daddy! Some fairy godmother you are. I thought you guys were supposed to turn maids into princesses. Some princesses deserve to be maids.
Now the spoiled princess from Beverly Hills is about to become...
I did not spend 6 years in junior college to be a maid.
the newest maid in Malibu.
You're kidding.
I give her 24 hours tops.
Who is this?
That's the new maid.
What have you done to my wrinkled suit?
Preston.
I bought it wrinkled. It's a Giorgio Armano wrinkle.
She used to have it made.
You're the new maid.
Not really.
That's what I've heard.
But now, she's made to order. Ali Sheedy, Valerie Perrine, Dick Shawn, Beverly D'Angelo, Michael Onkeen, Tom Skerritt.
Fairy godmother, I don't want to be poor. I don't want to be boring. Help me, fairy godmother, please.
Made to order.
Okay, that's the trailer for Made to Order. This is the romantic comedy with Ali Sheedy playing a spoiled brat who one day has a fairy godmother who takes away everything from her, and she has to learn hard lessons about life by being a maid instead of a poor little rich girl. And there's a brewing romance, and there's friendships that she makes, and it's basically a fairy tale, but I'm like a 1987 fairy tale where the leading character is a coked up rich girl who likes to party and listen to like Spirit in the Sky and in a new wave rock club, and likes to speed and the highway and like pick up like strangers and like spend hundreds of dollars on them and with champagne and just like party all the time. A party girl. And so she needs to grow up, and she's already a little too old to be living that kind of lifestyle and living it on her father's dime. Her father's played by holy crap, I'm tired. I forgot his name. Her father's played by Tom Skerritt, who I love from a lot of movies, especially Poltergeist 3. Poltergeist 3's Tom Skerritt, and Beverly D'Angelo plays her fairy godmother. And there's a lot of actors in the movie that I like and play fun roles, but especially the people that she works for. I mean, these two characters are pretty insane. They, Dick Shawn and Valerie Perrine. She works for this rich couple who are very wacky, to say the least, and have some interesting needs and wants from her as a maid and as people in general, as rich people, eccentric rich people. I always love these kinds of movies where it's 80s and they're rich and they're like they don't know what to do with their lives and they have these weird lifestyles, and the movie puts you into the character's point of view, who's the poor character and who has to like deal with all of that stuff. I just like that kind of point of view. I just like putting characters into Beverly Hills rich people's lives and just having fun with that and all the zaniness that can ensue from that. And of course the movie's a lot about her trying to deal with that, learning how to be a good maid and just kind of learning some hard lessons about life. And Ali Sheedy's always been an actress that I liked, and of course having a crush on her in War Games and then Short Circuit, and of course the John Hughes movie, Breakfast Club, and St. Elmo's Fire. And I think for me this is where, at this point, Ali Sheedy as an actress, that I liked her a lot in, but maybe after this point I wasn't so in love with what she was doing and the role she was getting. They weren't so great. I just always kind of liked a good fairy tale in a way, because it appeals to that sensitive side to me. But also delivering a very 80s fairy tale, I think is really fun. And Michael Onkeen plays the chauffeur that she kind of falls for, and he's a piano player who everyone has like these wants and dreams and hopes and aspirations, and they, of course, real life gets in the way of those things, and she has to bring out the best in people and try to put people before her before she can possibly go back to her life as being the daughter of Tom Skerritt. At this point, like the fairy godmother put a spell on him so he could forget her. And so she's trapped in this world where her dad doesn't recognize her anymore, but she's always seeing him. It's kind of sad. Wah wah wah. But I don't know. I fall for it every time for some reason. And the movie casts a spell on me, if you will. Beverly D'Angelo is a chain-smoking fairy godmother, casts a spell on me, and it's, I don't know, I just always really liked it. And there's a singer in the movie, the other maid in the movie, who kind of takes her under her wing as a singer, and some good numbers in the movie that I like a lot. So I like a good fairy godmother fairy tale story with some fun 80s music, very 80s music in it. So it appeals to that part of me. 87 had so much fun and so many kinds of fun. I'm so happy I got to talk about a lot of these movies with you. I want to thank you so much for joining me on this adventure. It's a very long adventure in talking adventures in 1987. I just we're just so an embarrassment of riches with the summer. I mean, just goodness gracious, so many good movies.
Yeah, it was a little daunting to do this the whole summer as a podcast because there's so much good stuff there.
So much good stuff. I mean, I probably would have, ordinarily would have stuck to the format of going month per month, but there's no way I would keep it up. I'd be so behind. I'd be talking about 87 into 19. Well, it's like 2019. I don't know. It seems kind of crazy. So I'm glad we got through it. We talked about all our favorite movies from the summer, and thank you guys for listening as always, and thank you so much, David, for joining me. We'll be back with more episodes. There's a lot to talk about movie-wise. There's a lot of different kinds of episodes and podcast ideas that I have floating out there, and some things I've discussed with people and possibilities. So we'll get to talk about those things soon. So hopefully I will announce those as time goes on. Hopefully the podcast will be a bit closer together. It'll be a few months, hopefully. Knock on wood, knock on my brain, which is empty right now. But thank you again, guys. Thank you for sticking with us. And I appreciate it. I appreciate everyone who's asked for the podcast and said that they miss it. And I really, every time that someone mentioned that, it really kind of melted my heart a little bit. Because you do care, and that's nice to hear. It's always nice to hear. So thank you. And thank you again, David. And have a good night, and have a good weekend. Whoever, this is a weekend? It's a long weekend, right? So have a good long weekend. And we'll talk soon. Take care. Ciao for now. There's things that you guess, and the things that you know. There's boys you can trust, and girls that you don't. There's little things you hide, and little things that you show. Sometimes you think you're gonna get it, but you don't, and that's just the way it goes. I swear I won't tease you, won't tell you no lies. Don't need no Bible, just look in my eyes. I've waited so long, baby, now that we're friends. Every man's got his patience, and here's where mine ends. I want your sex. I want your love. I want your sex. I want your sex. It's playing on my mind. It's dancing on my soul. It's taking so much time. So why don't you just let me go? I'd really like to try. Oh, I'd really love to know. When you tell me you're gonna regret it, then I tell you that I love you, but you still say no. I swear I won't tease you, won't tell you no lies. Don't need no Bible, just look in my eyes. I've waited so long, baby, out in the cold, but I can't take much more, girl. I'm losing control. I want your sex.
Don't fuck with the lords of hell.
Don't fuck with the babysitter.
Great. The blood-sucking Brady Bunch.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.